Ozempic and eating carnivore and what is right for you based on data, not influencer view count, then this podcast is going to be for you. I've got Dr. Tina here, who is a fascinating human in many regards. First of all, because she is actually a practicing doctor. She's also a naturopathic doctor, trained both ways, holistically and traditional medicine. And so she understands the full gamut. She's also 51 years old. And so she talks a lot about what it means to be a woman and to be a woman through the ages. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it with Dr. Tina. You know what I wanted to start is basically one. I was laughing with Gabrielle Lyon because I'm like, how come doctors are hotter now than they've ever been? You, her, Andrew
Thank you.
Huberman, amazing. And I think that's actually kind of how it should be, right? Like if people are healthy, it doesn't mean hot, like you have to look like Kim Kardashian, but like healthy and fit and talking to us about being healthy and fit, you should probably look the fucking part. Is that a crazy thing to say that like doctors should also practice what they preach?
I feel strongly about that. I feel like you have to walk the talk.
I think your story is really interesting too, because you weren't always so perfect. And so, maybe you could talk a little bit about the fact that like, hey, wherever you guys are, we see you. I see you because I was you. And now you're 51, you look great, and you're applying these practices in a way that's like you can be a normal human too. So maybe talk to us about the pack a day situation.
Yeah, so we were talking off camera. I chain smoked for 10 years, pack a day from 14 to 24. Don't know why. Probably because I was, growing up in Oregon where it rains all the time and it's really depressing and dark. We drank a lot back then. That was like a big drinking culture. I don't think that today's young people are drinking nearly as much, but when I grew up, everybody was drinking, particularly in places where there was nothing else to do. And I wasn't so healthy and fit. I think as a child, I spent a lot of time doing gymnastics and sports. And so there was some muscle memory there. And then I spent a long swath of time just eating, I call myself I was a macaroni and cheeseitarian. I literally was just, I'm not going to eat meat. And then I ate just garbage, so I pretty much consumed garbage for a extensive period of time. And then I had my daughter who's going to be 25, gosh, in a few weeks. And I remember laying on the couch with a migraine, just feeling awful and looking at her, and she was a toddler and she was like, Mom, come play, Mommy, come play. And I remember thinking, I can't be a piece of shit mom. Like I can't lay here and be that mom, when I know better. And by then I had spent time working with my mentor, who was a phenomenal naturopathic physician. I knew better and I wasn't doing it. I was still eating like Pop-Tarts and I wasn't smoking or drinking then, but I just wasn't doing anything. And so then I spent a period of time kind of wafting around, not really sure how to implement. Started naturopathic college, was learning along the way what I was supposed to do even more so. And then I was coming upon 40. And I was like, God, I better train for menopause. Because when my mom hit menopause, it was a train wreck. She went from this beautiful, tiny little thing to just really having her metabolic health go sideways. And my mentor had always taught me that metabolic health was the crux of everything. Keep your waist circumference low, keep your muscle, like back in the 90s, he was telling me to get off the treadmill and start lifting weights.
Wow.
In the 90s.
That was not cool then.
No. And he told me to quit eating white foods, all white foods, meaning, starches, carbs, focus on protein. And so I had been around it. I knew better. I'd been around it for a long time. And finally I was like, I got to just walk the talk.
So you basically, you saw your mom go through menopause, and when you say metabolic health, basically what that means is she became quite overweight.
Yes. And then you end up in this pre-diabetic state, which is, they call it metabolic syndrome, which a lot of people are walking, the last stats, we have 2018 stats that were published in 2021 showing that close to, I think, 94% of US adults have cardiometabolic compromise. So it's this pre-diabetes state, this phase 1, if you will, stage 1, some people call it. And so back then they called it Syndrome X. It was brand new. Nobody had appreciated it. And so it was this conglomerate of symptoms and they didn't really know what to do with it, but you stay on that trajectory and you will end up with type 2 diabetes at some point. You just suddenly arrive and your numbers match on labs and your doctor's like, congratulations, you have type 2. Well, that damage has been happening for, 10, 15, 20 years sometimes.
Oh man. Yeah, I saw this thing the other day and it kind of made me giggle on the internet. It's like when you try to lose weight, you avoid sugar, carbs, seed oils, do 24-hour prolonged fasts, and go carnivore. When you want your dog to lose weight, you put less food in the bowl and you walk him more. So like, what is the answer? Should we just eat less and walk more? Or is it actually more complex than that for those of us today?
It's all of it. It's both. And this is where the calories in, calories out people want to fight with the insulin resistance people.
Right.
And it's both. And so the way that I like to think about it is we have certain metabolic pathways and they exist in a counterbalance. Not to get too nerdy, but most simplistically, we have this AMPK, this AMP kinase pathway, which helps get your mitochondria revving. It helps people feel better when they have their AMPK pathway revved up. It also, when too high, can become catabolic, meaning it starts to waste you. This is where I think high dose GLP-1 comes into being a problem, is it revs the AMPK. On the other side, we have mTOR, and mTOR is like your muscle building. You rev that pathway through strength training and through eating more protein.
Mm-hmm.
And when that pathway is too high, and insulin resistance can actually push it pathologically. When that side's too high, you end up with modern diseases like cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, it's a balance. So we need to be doing a buffet of all the things.
God, it's so annoying. I think for people listening today, you're like, God, I have so many things that I need to do to change my life. I'm just trying to be a little bit fitter. I want to look a little bit sexier. I want to have a longer life or a healthier lifespan. But there's so much, and there's so much information. Like I saw this comparison of the historical food pyramid versus a modern day food pyramid, and I'd be curious your take on it. Basically, the inverted pyramid, which they're calling like the low carb food pyramid, kind of sounds like what your doctor friend was talking to you about, is like at the top. So the least amount, we have those high in carbohydrates, starchy vegetables, nuts and seeds, low sugar fruits. And then in the middle, we should be doing a lot of low carb fruits and vegetables. And then at the bottom, we should be doing the most whole fat, dairy, and proteins, fats and oils, etc. Is that right versus the inverse of what we used to be? And is it too simplistic to say that that is right for everybody?
I think it's too simplistic to say. I think everybody's a little bit different. You can over carnivore yourself into insulin resistance. High levels of arachidonic acid can send you into insulin resistance as well. So the way that I like to think about it is just eat real food.
Mm-hmm.
Get enough protein. What does that mean? We could go high protein, we could go lower protein. I think it depends on the individual. I think it depends on their age. I think it depends on their goals, how active they are, how fit they are. But generally speaking, a gram of protein per pound of body weight is a great goal. So for women our size, I'm thinking 90 to 120 grams is a minimum goal, and then more if you're, pregnant or you're lifting a lot of weight. Make sure you get a variety of colors in your diet.
Mm.
And then as we get older, understand that we become more insulin resistant, period. As we age as women and we lose our estrogen stores, we become more insulin resistant, period. And the more muscle mass we lose with age and atrophy, because that's just a normal part of aging as we start to atrophy everywhere, that we will become more insulin resistant. So in my head, the goal is always to keep insulin sensitivity going, whatever that looks like. So I've carnivored myself into insulin resistance.
Wow.
So this is the people who say, I got fatter on carnivore. What's happening? They're inducing an insulin resistance. The women who show up in my clinic, and I've been treating them since they were your age, and then all of a sudden they show up and they're closer to my age, and they're like, I don't know what happened. This like 15 to 20 pounds just showed up. I haven't changed anything. That's low key insulin resistance. And it may not even be showing up on labs yet. It can be happening at a cellular level, and the symptomology is what I go off of. I don't care what their labs say. If they're exhibiting signs of insulin resistance, i.e. random weight gain that doesn't make sense, it's not adding up. So there's no reason to make it crazy. We have to move every day. We're human, we're primates, we're fancy mammals with opposable thumbs.
Yep.
We are a lever system. We are an upright lever system. We are designed to pick up heavy shit and put it down. We are designed to ambulate and walk. So it doesn't need to be crazy. I don't know. We get so off track, and I think the internet's very polarizing, and I think people create content that's clickbaity so people will follow, but it becomes very confusing for the average person. And I have been singing the same song for decades, which is eat more meat, lift weights. Deadlifts fix a lot of things, especially, if you can get yourself heavy. And what is heavy? That is really up to the individual. It's different. We probably have a different version of heavy, right?
Yours is bigger than mine.
No, I'm sure you lift
So.
way more than me. I think that sleep is critical, and we as a society I think it's coming around, but my generation, it was cool to not sleep. It was like the less sleep you could
Yeah,
get by on, the cooler you were, you know?
totally.
My generation, Gen X, was raised up on that heroin chic skinny look. So it was like the skinnier you could be. So we all pretty much like wasted ourselves away into sarcopenia, walked into our middle age with no muscle, and then wondering why my age
What is
cohort.
sarcopenia?
It's just this, it's muscle wasting. It's poverty of the flesh. That's literally the translation, is
Oof.
poverty of the flesh. So as we age and we become more inflamed through the aging process, we literally start to waste. And then its sister is cachexia, and that is an inflammatory induced, like when people are sick with cancer or they've got a, they've come through a terrible viral illness. You've seen people come out of COVID
Yeah.
wasted away. That's cachexia.
Mm.
And once those processes start, it's almost like a feed forward mechanism. So you've heard, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon talk about how the older you get, the more protein you need, the more you need to be focusing on this, which seems unfair. I'm 50 and I'm like, dude, I just want to chill. I've been fighting
Yeah.
my body my whole life.
Yep. Yep.
So the key is to not fight the body, chill the F out, because people are, I think women in particular, they think, okay, Orange Theory, CrossFit, I'm going to hit it hard. As we get into menopause, that becomes less, the success rate goes down there.
Wow.
We need stimulation, but I really think in many cases we need to find what works for our bodies and not drive that cortisol. I think the intensity level as we get older needs to be modulated more for the individual.
So as we get older, or as you get older as a woman, you should do less Orange Theory, by and large, less intense cardio, and more weightlifting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. And I like strength training because you can gauge it for the individual. You can take longer breaks between sets.
Yeah.
You can increase the weight. You can increase the reps. You can play with the tension, time under tension. You can pace the move so that we're just doing, really slow eccentric and then more explosive concentric, like whatever it takes. I think it can be modulated much more for the individual, depending on where they're at, what their orthopedic faults are, how old they are.
That's actually really helpful because, like, my husband, for instance, is a former Navy SEAL. So he's a psychopath, like Gabrielle's husband. And he will always say intensity, intensity, intensity. But for instance, for many times, I already have a lot of stress at work.
Yes.
And I run like at a pretty high stress level as is. And so when I'm in the gym, I like lifting heavy, but I don't love that butterfly in the chest,
Yep.
heavy sprint feeling. And, he would say historically, well, that's what you have to do if you want to get results. And it's interesting because my body has kind of been like, nah, I don't think that's not it for me anymore. But there's actually science that backs that you don't have to go into the gym as you get older and heavy breathe, psychopath, sweating everywhere to have longevity success as a woman.
I don't I don't think it's necessary. And I think people will argue across the board. I do think it's important, Dr. Stacy Sims talks about making sure that you get certain levels of intensity in increments. She calls it sprint interval training. So
Mhm.
you're doing these short increments of high intensity and then you're resting. And I always say rest as long as you need. That might be 3 to
Mm.
5 minutes. It doesn't have to be these short intervals of rest either. And make sure you completely get back to having easy breathing and then go hit it again. So I might do that on the rower. I love the Airdyne bike, the assault bike. I will just hit it until I count to about 20 to 30 before I feel my whole system shaking.
Mhm.
And then I just get off and wander around the gym for a while and, go do something else. Men are different than women, and women at your age are different than women in menopause. And so I find when I crank up the intensity too high, I blow up. I just get fatter everywhere. And it's cortisol. It's because I have enough cortisol. My life is also quite stressful. And I end up in this sort of like chronic cortisol state where I'm puffy and bloated, but cortisol is
Right.
also catabolic. Cortisol chews up your tissues. So if we're cranking cortisol in the gym, but we're trying to gain muscle, you can see where intensity needs to be dialed in for the individual. And that's going to be different for all of us. So I can't work out like Gabrielle.
Yeah.
If I tried, I would die.
Yeah,
I feel like
me
I'm
too.
dying and it's not helpful. And my sleep gets messed up and
Yep.
I feel like I'm going to faint when I stand up from a squatted position. Like my adrenals are like, no, do not
So
do this to us.
how do you know when a workout is right for you or not? How does a woman listening to this go, okay, I need to work out more and more intensely. I need to do less. How do you listen to your body correctly? What's the way to know?
I think you should feel better when you leave the gym
Mm.
than you came in. You should feel invigorated. You should feel like you got a boost. You should feel like it's going to carry you through your day. You should feel like your mood's improved. You should not feel like you want to make a sweat angel on the floor and stay there. and you should not have to go lie down on the couch. Sometimes I do have to go sit in the car for a few minutes after a workout and just kind of like recalibrate my nervous system. And then the next day you should feel better, not worse. You might be a little sore, but you shouldn't feel like, God, I feel like I got hit with a truck. That's your adrenals saying, no, do not do
Interesting.
this. So I think that the intensity level needs to be dialed for the individual. It's really, really important. And we need to consider the implications of cortisol, because if you're a middle-aged woman, you're stressed out of your mind, you're insulin resistant by nature because your hormones are waning. Now you're trying to do these long intermittent fasts. You're trying to do hardcore intensity training because you're like, I got to keep up. I could do it 10 years ago. And these women come in, they're hitting a wall and they are literally blowing up. Usually right here is the indication. The
So, oh, your midsection is an indication of I am actually working out incorrectly and eating incorrectly. And it's not just that I should just walk more and eat less.
Yes. The walking's great. Always. I think it's nice and calm. Walking it keeps your sense. We want to hone the central nervous system. And the way I think about the central nervous system is we want to hit it to get a hormetic impact, meaning hormesis is, for the listeners, is just this concept of strategic intervals of stress. And then the key to hormetic stress is to rest the organism after and
Mm,
refeed. So
mm.
we want to hit it. So you might leave like maybe you PR'd your deadlift that day and you know what that feels like. So have you ever cried after?
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
it's not because you're happy. It's because your nervous system just went, right?
I thought I was happy, but
Well,
now,
you are, but
yeah,
like you're crying and you're like,
yeah,
I don't know what's happening right now. And
right.
that's your nervous system going, "Ugh," which is great if you spend the next 2 days chilling, maybe doing, and that doesn't mean laying on, sitting your ass on the couch all day, but you're doing some gentle movement. You might choose yoga, you might choose walking, you might choose swimming, whatever. Maybe you go for a hike with your husband or whatever, and your cute dog. And then you refeed.
Yeah.
And then that hormetic hit was therapeutic. It wasn't catabolic.
I just think that's so beautiful because, if you're listening out there and you feel like everybody's always telling you to do more and to keep going and you're not enough. And, yes, you should be rich and you should be happily married and you should have 2 kids and you should have great girlfriends. You should also have a six pack.
Right.
You just need to know that that's ridiculous. And it's okay to not have all of that at once. In fact, that would be ridiculous to have all of that at once. And also, I think it's so liberating to know, yeah, we need to move more, probably. Yeah, we need to eat a little bit less, maybe a tiny bit less drinking, but also there's some real things out there where it's not always just do more.
And you
Could
gotta
actually be do
live.
less. Yeah.
Like a drink might actually, and I'm not like saying go drink, but a glass of wine to celebrate might actually lower your cortisol and allow you to have a happier homeostasis inside your body. Think of it that way. We're always trying to go towards homeostasis. So if you're trying to work out with your husband and you're trying to keep pace and you're like, I don't feel right, then listen to that. Go do something else. Maybe
Yeah.
you just go you go lift slow and heavy and you get a couple sets in and you're like, I'm good. My husband the other day was watching me work out and he came over. He's like, you're done. Like he could just see it. I started shaking and my form was falling apart. And he's like, you're done. You've had a stressful week. We're done. We're leaving. So I think that's important.
I like this husband of yours.
He's downstairs.
Oh, is
He's
he?
probably
Oh,
playing with
I
your
can't
dog.
wait to meet him. I brought my husband to work today too.
Oh, good.
We can have our husbands and the doggo together.
He's a good old farmer. And I want to add too, I think this is important. You asked me like, how do I look good at 51? I do think there's something to, and you mentioned six pack. I think there's something as women age, and I know that other trainers will back me up on this. As women hit middle age, we look better with a little bit of fat. We just keep like I had
Yeah.
a woman in her 60s, an influencer, beautiful, very fit woman. She said, "How does your face look great?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think my face looks that great, but thank you." But I'm like, it's fat. Like it's actually there still. Like
Yeah.
I think leaning out to the point of that, because then you have to fill it with something.
Yeah.
And that starts getting weird.
And there's a lot of studies that also back that men actually like women who have a little bit of fat on them because it leads to more higher predictability for fertility, right? Not too much.
Right.
But is that true? I've heard that.
Yes, yes. And also, our estrogen stores are in our fat. So when we lose ovarian function, it is our fat cells that make the estrogen. And they make a form called estrone, which I don't think is as nearly as good as the estradiol that our ovaries make when we're younger. But this is my little estrogen depot, my little
Mm,
pooch. I mean, I
mhm.
would love to have my six pack abs back again, but also every time I lose too much weight, my hormones go in the toilet. And I've had
Wow.
patients who got tummy tucks and they show up and they're batshit crazy. And they're like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, you literally just sucked out all your fat. which was all of your hormonal depot. So, and of course, I'm supplementing hormones as I age, but your fat stores are sort of your lifeline to a lot of things. And so, keeping that super shredded look as a woman, I don't think it's great for longevity.
I cannot wait to tell my husband that, this is just my anti-crazy. Yeah,
It is.
exactly.
It
Well, he's
is.
actually always the one that's like, "You need to chill on losing weight." Well, I have a question about that, though. So, I'm getting older, and I absolutely do feel, whether it's true or not, that my metabolism is slowing down. Is that real? Are there ways around it? Can we keep our metabolism as we age?
Supposedly, the metabolism is not slowing. That's what data shows, which I know, I'm in the same boat. What I think is happening is we're having hormonal shifts. And like I said, the estrogen shifts will cause the insulin to shift because insulin's a hormone at the end of the day. And then we're having, I think, well, no, I don't think, I know as our estrogen starts to shift, our tolerance to stress goes down. So women do not tolerate stress the way men do. Women do not tolerate lack of sleep the way men do. Women do not tolerate consistent intensity the way men do. And so as our estrogen is waning, that gets worse and worse and harder and harder to deal with. And cortisol will make you put fat on in weird places.
Mm.
And then I think thirdly, we're losing muscle mass. And so this is why the lifting is non-negotiable. Like it's just non-negotiable. I was telling people a long time ago on the internet to eat meat and deadlift when all the influencers were like, just do yoga and go vegan. And it was not popular.
You're
And I'm so
right.
glad that, folks like Dr. Gabrielle have finally gotten the message out that women are in Dr. Stacy Sims. It's like, this is non-negotiable if you want to age well. And it's not about looking hot. It's about not breaking a hip.
That is what yeah, you had this quote that I loved, which is, "When in doubt, deadlift. Need to make a big decision but feel unsure, deadlift. Need to process anger or frustration, deadlift. Want to find calm zen on a chaotic day, deadlift. Deadlifts fix nearly everything and always bring calm clarity." Why do you like deadlifts so much?
I think it's because it hits that central nervous system hard enough that you get that whomp. And this is where lifting light doesn't give it to you.
Mm,
So I understand that I have some pretty serious spinal orthopedic issues and I cannot deadlift the way I used to under the kind of weight that I used to. So I cannot get that whomp the same way, but it's not the same whomp that you get from, orange theorying yourself into exhaustion. There's just something about a heavy central nervous system hit. And then in the Strong First community, which is like the Russian KGB kettlebell community, they always say leave one in the tank.
mm,
Right? And so you get that whomp, but you leave one in the tank and you come out with superpowers. I think
yeah.
I stole that from Tim Ferriss. I think it was Tim Ferriss I heard a long time ago say, when you need to make a big decision, or I think he was counseling some CEOs and that he was telling their team, like, when you need to make a big decision, go deadlift and then make the decision. So that's my rule. Like, if I have to make a big decision about something, I will lift and then I will sleep before I decide anything. And then when I wake up, it's usually the same decision I came to before that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I promise myself that I will exhaust my nervous energy, I will sleep, and then I will wake up and I will decide.
And that's how you have better decision making.
I think so.
3 steps. I like that. You have talked about the science surrounding who you surround yourself with. What happens depending on the people that you choose to spend time with? Does that matter?
I think so. I think it does, and the data is showing that our microbiomes are contagious. And well, going back many years, I had my daughter. I was just married to like a complete loser, and I had a child with him. And I don't mean to speak disparagingly of him, but many years later, the daughter has concluded as well. That was not a good decision, but I got my beautiful daughter on this planet because of it. So I think 5 months postpartum, I was super depressed. I went to visit my buddy and like 2 of my best friends in Seattle, and they were, my friends from, like, high school. And he was working for Microsoft, and he had really risen the ranks, and he was making good money. And he said, and I'm sure people have heard this, "You can't fly with the eagles if you're hanging out with the turkeys,"
Mhm.
right? And so or the turkey vultures or something like that. And I was driving home from Seattle, and that's all I could think about. And it was something that hung with me that and there's been other points in my life where I've had to make decisions and be like, this is not my circle of influence. This
Mhm.
cannot be my circle of influence. I have to, you have to be in the room with the people that are more successful. You have to be the dumbest person in the room. You have to be the
Mhm.
poorest person in the room so that you can continue to up level and be around these people who mirror it and make it look easy, right? Like I'm sure you started there too.
Mhm.
And you go to some mastermind and you're like,
Totally.
this guy sitting next to me has 5 businesses and makes $1 billion a year, and he's not that smart,
Mhm.
but he's innovative and he's got this cool thing. So, like, what's my innovative cool thing? And when it comes to health, our microbiomes are also very contagious, literally
Mhm.
contagious. So, if you're living with somebody who has type 2 diabetes, if you're living with somebody who has any number of diseases, we have data showing that that is quite contagious. So you could very well end up with high blood pressure if they have high blood pressure. And I know it sounds crazy, but the actual microbiome is will rub off. My buddy is a microbiome expert, and he was Karan Krishnan. You should have him on your show. He's brilliant. He was sharing that a study a few years ago where one person in the family took an antibiotic, and the entire family's microbiome shifted within days. So, communicable and non-communicable diseases, I think, are transferable via microbiome. And then also just health. Like, how do you how do you stay motivated? Because it's discipline, not motivation. But if the person you're married to is not also disciplined, we have a problem, right? We have a mismatch. And so I think it's important. And your friend cohorts and the people you're eating food with and the food choices you're making and the how late are we staying up choices we're
Yeah.
making and all the choices.
Well, it's fascinating because I didn't know from a health perspective that the science backs it, and that was fascinating. So I went down a little rabbit hole looking at some studies after I saw that quote from you. And what's fascinating is this it's the same thing for productivity. So there's great studies that show that your productivity increases by about 15% if you sit in a 25 square foot radius of a high performer, and it decreases by about 30% if you sit next to a underperformer. So
Wow.
there's actually like, a asymmetric downside to it in some
Wow.
ways. And then the same thing is definitely true for money. So it seems that money is contagious as well. So is divorce, I saw.
Yeah.
Your likelihood of getting divorced increases if you are around people and quite close that get divorced.
There's even data that they don't talk about much anymore, but several years ago, before the healthy at every size movement really took hold, um, and I'm not saying that's a improper movement. I think it's more of a hypothesis. I do believe everybody should love their body at every size. I mean, disclaimer, it's just we also cannot glorify pathologic states of being, right? Um,
Yep.
but the data was going around before it was getting censored, and they showed in one study that if you have even 5 friends on the internet, just internet proximity, not in real person, who are struggling with obesity, your chances of becoming obese are exponentially higher. So I don't, it's not just microbiome, it's our brain's mirror, right?
Yeah.
Our mirror neurons in our brain. And who knows, but all that to say, I try to surround myself, and I'm not talking about leanness or fatness. It's not about that. It's about people who just take care of their health and prioritize their health, period, whatever size that comes in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's important to me is like being around people who actually get it, who also prioritize it. Prioritizing it, I guess would be the word.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny too because these days, like, if you say, "Nah, I'm not really drinking right now. No, I don't eat those types of food. No, I only do this." You're sort of criticized in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. But if you eat all the junk food, you do whatever you want, you don't work out. There's no criticism allowed. That's actually perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And
It's
so we've kind
weird.
of gone upsy, downsy, topsy turvy world,
Yes.
and we've lost our collective minds, and I think part of, like, what I've learned about getting fit is, like, if you want to get fit, if you want to get financially free, you have to be okay setting boundaries for other people to stay out of if they are not gonna help you progress,
Yep.
because we are just not strong enough as individual will-powered beings to have willpower all the time against everything. So even if the science didn't show that it's literally not even up to you, it just transfers in your microbiome,
Yeah.
even, willpower, I mean, think about it for a second. Am I gonna be healthier at the end of the day if I'm hanging out with you and Gabrielle Lyon? You guys don't drink, you lift every single day, you eat real foods, you have healthy and happy marriages, you work on things that you love and care about. Is it going to be more likely that I will be more of those things because you are them and that's all I'm around? As opposed to if I'm hanging out with, like you talked about, the punk rockers that you're with back in the day, everybody's smoking, everybody's drinking.
Ooh.
It's just hard to stand against what the entire tribe's doing.
Yeah, my friends did not generally age well from that time period.
Yeah.
I quit smoking when I was 24, and I remember just like them calling me saying, "Where are you? You're not at the bar. You're not hanging out." And I'm like, "I can't hang out with you guys anymore. Like, I just can't hang out with you
Did
anymore."
you say that directly?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I got married, so I've been married 3 times, not successful in the first 2. When I married this husband, I literally, and some people will disagree with me, I cut off several of my male friends because they had shown interest in me in the past at some point, whether I'd been friends with them since we were like teenagers or not. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't, I can't have any of those things in my life. Not when I
Yeah.
want this life. So I
100%.
cut people off, and maybe it's because I'm an Aquarius and I'm good at it. But if somebody's not showing that it's not that I need them to be doing the same thing as me or that I even need them to help me get somewhere. It's just we need to be in alignment as we move through life together. And the older I get, and you'll experience this too, your circle gets much tighter as you get older because you just have less tolerance for bullshit, period. And it's just easier to be like, yeah, there's nothing here. It's not that I need them to serve me, but it needs to be reciprocal. Something needs to be, an upside for me to stay in that friendship. And so I'm a big fan of just like, especially during COVID and those days, I was like, just, if these people are torturing you to do something you don't want to do or to participate in some grand experiment that you don't want to be a part of, then like, fuck them.
Yeah. Opt out.
Like,
Opt
that's
out.
not that hard.
I love
These are
that.
not your friends, And
No.
my husband's made it really clear for me. I'll say, my friend, blah, blah, blah. And then this happened. He's like, that's not a friend. And so just learning what those definitions are. He's like, that might be an acquaintance, but that person definitely doesn't have your best interest at heart. I just read a study yesterday that women who encourage you to cut your hair off are actually and I didn't read the whole thing. I read the abstract. Basically, they are seeing you as competition in mating, in the mating world. So they are encouraging you to cut your hair off to be less valuable or
What?
perceived as, so like basically it was like if your girlfriend's telling you to cut your hair off, she's not your friend kind of thing, which as a girl who spent her whole life with short hair, I'm like a short-haired girl by nature. I don't know if I entirely agree with that because
Yeah.
like I am in my power and sassy when I have short hair,
Yeah.
but there is that was an interesting take on it.
I actually agree with it. I don't even need to see the science on
Yeah.
that. I think if somebody else is telling you to cut, well, especially if you're, if you're single, dudes just like chicks with long hair typically.
Yeah.
By and large,
Hair's
statistically,
a thing.
yeah, it's just whatever. And so that's hysterical. So one great red flag for friends is, do they tell you to cut your hair or not?
Well,
And
girls
if
are
they
weird.
do,
Yeah, girls are weird. Girls are don't have you noticed that? It doesn't ever go away. Even if they're your best friend. There's
yeah,
just this weird low-key resource guard. I think we're evolutionary built, we're built for that. Women are built to resource guard
yeah,
because they're looking for the viable males in the population that will give them good offspring and also protect them. And there's less of those than there are women who are fertile. So I think it's just evolutionary that we
yeah. That actually tracks. It makes me feel a little bit better though. I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit more comfortable saying, like, I feel jealousy. That happened the other day. I have a wonderful friend, Vanessa Van Edwards, who's on the internet too. She's one of my dear friends. I adore her, and she's hyper talented. She's incredible, and she got this opportunity, and my immediate reaction was jealousy. It was like immediate. It wasn't. I was excited for her. It wasn't this. It was, fuck, really? Why'd she get that? Not me. And then I was like, ew, yuck,
yeah.
gross. I hate that that was my immediate reaction. And then, I thought about it. I'm like, why am I jealous of her? And I was like, well, because she's really in what I call like flow. Like she just, she's in this period in her life, which I have envy about, which is where like things come to her. She's kind of aligned things in her life how she wants it. And she's flowing. And some days I feel like I'm grinding,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's really an envy of like the decisions that she's made, some of the choices. And so I struggled with that for a minute. And then I called her and I was like, I have to tell you something weird. This happened to you, and I'm now very excited for you, but I was jealous at first. And I just wanted to tell you that, like, I'm so happy for you, and I'm sorry I felt a moment of jealousy about that. And like, you're gonna crush it, and it's gonna be amazing. And now the story I'm telling myself is like, you doing that means that I get to do that more. But
Right.
I would feel like a weird friend if I didn't call you and say, "Ugh, I had this gnarly thing I felt." And now I'm trying to move through it. But I think it's also like acknowledging that we probably all get that. And I called another friend of mine, Kim, and told her about it. And she was like, Cody, every time I go into a bookstore and I see like my 5 friends who have best-selling books up there, I go, "Fuck, why didn't I write a book?"
Yeah.
She goes, "I feel that all the time."
Yeah.
And so I think it's really nice that we're honest. Like you can be honest with your friends. I felt a little jealousy because that is so cool, that thing that you're doing. But you're right, it's probably actually genetic.
I
It's
think it's evolutionary.
it's evolutionary. That's the right
Yeah.
word.
I had a friend, uh, recently I was talking to, and I was telling her how completely dialed in I saw her business, and how I was jealous, like, straight up, like, your landing pages are beautiful, your copy's beautiful, your ads are converting, everything's so beautiful. And I'm over here like throwing shit at the wall, hoping it sticks. And sometimes it sticks and I make $1 million, and sometimes it doesn't stick. And it's just I just had like an abysmal launch happen that
Oh,
did not
yeah.
convert. And I was like, I clearly missed the mark on that. And she just looked at me in shock, and she's like, "I've been so jealous of you all year. Like, you're always on all these
Mm.
podcasts and you've been doing all this stuff." And I'm like, "Girl, it's wearing me out."
Yeah,
Like being on
yeah,
planes, and you're off in Aruba on vacation and like doing
totally.
all this. You look great in a bikini, and I'm over here with like cortisol puff. And so
Yeah,
it's just one of those moments where we both just had the complete opposite read on,
yeah.
so
But it helps when you say it out loud, which is in a weird way, less gossipy and a more like, acknowledgement of a real feeling that is true and honest. And I think it's helpful when people hear people who are like kind of successful in one way or the other share it too, because they're like, oh, it's not just so many times you listen to podcasts, you're like, they seem to have it figured out.
oh
Cool. I'll
yeah.
just go, grab my bag of Cheetos and listen to Netflix and like fuck this whole thing. And so I like that we get to be honest about it.
I think it's the quote I heard I love is, "Look for the expanders and
Mm,
then thank them." And so
mm,
the minute I heard that, I immediately texted Gabrielle and I was like, "Thank you." Like I see her and I just think, "Oh, more is possible."
yeah,
And I see you too, and I'm like, "More is possible." Like there's levels to this video game.
totally.
So it's just a matter, and you don't have to hit all the levels, and also there's seasons,
Yeah.
right? And there's seasons to rest, and there's seasons to pull back, and there's seasons to push and grind. It's just like the gym. You can't grind all the time.
No.
And you can't go metabolic all the time. Like, there has to be windows here.
100%. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is talking about other things that happen to women. And then I want to get to something that's applicable to everybody. But is there data that shows lately that it is harder for women to get pregnant than it has been before? Because it feels like that.
Our fertility rates are in the toilet. Yeah, we're in trouble. I think we're going extinct, honestly, as a species.
What's happening?
It's a lot of things, and I can't say with, certainty because that's not entirely my wheelhouse, but I was seeing it early on in practice. I got licensed in 2008, and I was seeing it in practice early. A lot of young women coming in having issues. The way it's handled is weird. They give you drugs to, get your eggs to basically shoot out,
Right.
or your ovaries to
Right.
shoot out an egg. And there's a lot if you look at animal husbandry, they really have an appreciation for, like, hypothyroidism being the cause of infertility, and, low progesterone can be a contributor to holding on to that pregnancy. And so that is the way I've always approached it, is
Hmm.
making sure just to optimize a woman's, get the toxins out of her life, get her moving, deal with her metabolic dysfunction, and then thyroid and progesterone. But I think we're in a whole different world now at this point with the intervention of 2021. I think is a potential factor. We have data on that. I'm not making it up. I'm not trying to fearmonger. And then we've got abysmal fertility in men. We've got, plummeting testosterone rates. So their swimmers are not swimming so well. And I
Mm.
think overarching is this metabolic dysfunction
Yeah.
that I've been trying to beat the drum on for a long time. And it was not sexy. And thank God, Dr. Casey Means came out with her book and people are paying attention now. But I have been trying to get people. My mentor told me, keep your waist circumference in check at all costs and lift weights. Like, do not let the metabolic dysfunction get you. And we're seeing it in younger and younger and younger. I mean, children with severe metabolic dysfunction. And that does not bode well for fertility, because a body that is metabolically compromised is not going to want to reproduce.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a pickle. And then I'm hearing from my friends that are your age telling me that all their girlfriends are getting, IVF,
All of them.
which is crazy to me.
Yeah. I would say I have about 15% of my girlfriends who have done it naturally. Almost
Really?
everybody else, yeah, and maybe even 10% if you include, like, turkey basting or whatever that's called,
Yeah.
right? Is that the scientific term? I think so. So,
Just get it up there.
yeah, exactly.
Lay back and get it done.
But
That's crazy.
yeah, and these are women and not all of them are women who work, who might have, like, more stress. It's sort of across the gambit, and I would say from ages, like, 30 to, let's call it 41. I'm seeing all of them struggle with it by and large. I mean, I have a couple girlfriends that are on their, like, their 7th, 8th, ninth IVF
Oh
round.
my god, and that does terrible thing that's the problem, is that hormonal load that these women go through is just wreaking havoc on their metabolic health, so they're becoming less and less and less fertile through the process of IVF.
Oof.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah, but the wild thing is that why don't doctors talk to women about that? Why do they just go, "You can't get pregnant. Your blood level's fine, the swimmers are fine-ish," whatever they think fine means by average today. They don't really check for thyroid stuff. They don't ask at all about what your health is otherwise, and then they just tell you, "Let's begin IVF." Why
Because
is
that's
that?
their hammer, and that hammer's profitable. It's their hammer, like every doctor is gonna have their hammer. My hammer in my practice was needles. I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, let's stick a needle in it. Let's see what can we change in the tissue? What can we change in your immune response if we inject it?" Chiropractors adjust, naturopathic doctors give supplements, you know, it's their hammer, and so orthopedists are gonna do orthopedic surgery and, rehab docs are gonna rehab you all day. And I think we're seeing actually the cool part in the last 10 years is I'm seeing a lot less turf wars and a lot more doctors coming together, especially since 2020. It was very
Mhm.
clear there was, like, team freedom
Yep.
and everything else, and so that's been very cool because a lot of people have come over to the functional medicine side because they've seen, like, "Wait a minute, the system is they lied to us." I'm like, "Welcome, they've been lying to us for a long
Right.
time," right? And so, like, it didn't I knew 20 years ago that Big Pharma was quite corrupt. So, over here, I think we started melding more, and I'm hoping that that translates, but I don't know, I'm concerned. I think in most countries in the world, the what I have seen is that there's not even a population being born to replace the population. So we are at a certain point, there's a critical point where there's of no return. And I think South Korea's definitely hit it. And there's other
Mhm.
countries and the US is on the precipice, but
Japan's approaching.
we're a train wreck of health here and we have exported it out.
Yeah. Yeah, remember when we all thought Elon was crazy because he said that we needed to increase the population control? And you probably didn't. You probably realized that was real. And now it's like, no, Elon was right. We should be having more babies. And actually that we shouldn't be doing what the, World Health Organization was telling us, which was actually decrease population
Yeah.
size.
All my girlfriends who are did not participate in the intervention of 2021 and seem to be having babies very easy. Like
Mm.
all my closest girlfriends are breathing like it's every time I swear to God, they get out of that gauntlet of breastfeeding and everything and all of a sudden they're like, "Tina, I'm pregnant again." And they're all walking the walk, right? They're all living
Yeah.
very healthfully. I'm like, "Have as many babies as humanly possible. We need you." Like we need that.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Like the healthy, vital, natural, like keep going. If you're happy with it and you're having fun, keep going.
Well, you know what I like about you is you're honest about, corrupt practices in big pharma. You will say very head on that there were interventions you didn't like in medicine that you thought were systematically wrong, even, and that you think that there's a massive fertility crisis as engineered, maybe by the external environment, but also how doctors are handling it. But then you also have some really interesting take on GLP-1s, or as many people know it as, Ozempic. And so, what is your take on this drug or series of drugs? Are they bad? Are they good?
So they're peptides. And when I realized that they were peptides, I immediately got more intrigued because a peptide is just a string of amino acids. And you were saying your husband likes peptides. A lot of people you really can't age into middle age and be active and fit and not at some point come around to peptides
Mm,
because you end up in pain and you
yep,
end up with
that's true.
injuries, right?
Yeah.
And so the peptide community is really expanding. I think we're finding ease of execution with a lot of these oral forms of different peptides, BPC 157, TB 500, these, Wolverine peptides. There's all kinds of different peptides out there. And peptides by nature insert themselves, they're just strings of amino acids that are peptide bound together to make peptides. And then strings of peptides are just proteins.
Hmm.
That's the complexity of it. That's where it gets. And so peptides insert themselves where they need to go and they do their magic. Um, it just so happens that these peptides are over here in the big pharma bucket. I think it's because of the way that they are administered, injection wise. And so I started researching them because it was when was it? A couple summers ago, and there was just spring, summer. It was everywhere I looked. There was so much hype about it. And the weirdest part was the entire functional medicine community it was all sounding very propagandized. Like in 2020, immediately my ears perked up and I'm like, this sounds like propaganda. And
Mhm.
indeed, here we are. So it was the same kind of thing. I was this clickbaity nonsense I was seeing mainstream media, and then I was hearing the functional medicine and the medical freedom community also preaching the same message. Like, when do those 2 align?
Yeah.
That was weird. So immediately I was like, this smells sus. So I start looking into it and I find stacks of data showing from tip to toe really amazing regenerative healing and anti-inflammatory properties, really potent anti-inflammatory properties to these peptides.
Wow.
They're not just working by decreasing your, stomach motility. They're not just making you feel fuller longer. They're not just shutting down your appetite in your brain. They're not that's not where it ends. They actually are healing metabolic pathways, which the crux, in my opinion, the crux of most modern diseases is metabolic dysfunction. And we are all to some degree. I mean, if 94% of US adults are metabolically compromised, then that's 94% of your listeners.
Yeah.
Maybe yours are a bit better because, maybe our listeners of our pods are more educated, but generally speaking. And so I don't know what I think part of it was just me being I tried to make a podcast about it and come out and talk about it, and the pushback I got was so fierce and ferocious, and it was very reminiscent of 2020 when I was telling people to eat meat, go outside, lift weights. You don't need to be a sitting duck.
Mhm.
Like, viruses aren't there's a high, there's a high success rate of getting through all of these things if you go into it with good metabolic health and you start taking and even small steps today will translate into more potent and robust immune response. And it was very much like that. And I was like, this is weird. Even the bots, I was getting the same kind of bot. You've probably gotten a lot of bot messages. You know them when you see them, right? And you go
Oh,
look at
yeah.
the profile and you're like, this is a bot. So I'm getting this parroted response, just eat less and move more, just eat less and move more. And I'm like, no, I didn't mention weight loss. I was talking about Parkinson's. No, I didn't mention weight loss. I was sharing a study about this. And they just kept coming in. The functional medicine community got pissed at me. Um, I went on Dr. Mark Hyman's podcast to debate Callie Means. He wouldn't listen. He was yelling over the top of me. It was very, very polarized of a topic. And I was like, what have I stumbled into here? And I'm
Wow.
so insubordinate. I just kept pushing. The more they push back on me, the more I'm just like that. I'm like, oh, you want to go? I'll go. Okay. So, and I will go all like my favorite game is just obliterating people with data. So I'm like, oh, I got mountains over here and I can quote them. And I don't mean to be, that's not
No, I
probably,
love this
that's probably
about
my
you.
pathology.
Yes. Yes, let's
That's just,
go.
but yeah, it's like, all right, let's go. And the more I pushed forward, I got a lot of heat, but I started getting people listening and then I started, I've got a decent, I don't have a following your size, but I have a decent size following. And
Yeah.
I started getting hundreds and now thousands of messages from people saying, thank you so much. These peptides have changed my life completely. And I have been living in so much shame. I can't talk about it with my family. People who really did need it for type 2 diabetes, metabolic dysfunction, weight loss, which was not the conversation I was trying to have. I was trying to share out the neuroregenerative, the cardiovascular, all of the other benefits and the different organ systems that I was seeing, but everybody wanted to talk about weight loss. And these folks are messaging me saying, I was terrified. So-and-so terrified me. So-and-so influencer terrified me. The media terrified me. My doctor's been trying to get me to go on it. I finally did. And oh my gosh, my life has changed. And oh my gosh, I'm fertile now. And oh my gosh, my depression is gone. And oh my gosh, all my pain is gone. And oh my gosh, this one woman messaged me, this wonderful message, older woman who had her metabolic health completely obliterated by chemotherapy treatment and cancer treatment. And she's in her 60s. And the weight gain was putting her at higher risk for the cancer coming back, right?
Mhm.
Because obesity is a standalone risk factor for multiple types of cancer.
Yeah.
And she said, you keep going. Like, this was early on. She's like, you keep going because I went on these and here's my story. And so, one woman messages me and says, finally could go on rides at Disneyland with my kids. And so I wasn't trying to be the weight loss warrior for GLP-1s. I wasn't trying to defend Ozempic for weight
Yeah.
loss, but it's turned into that on a lot of these podcasts because some of these hosts really that's the conversation they want to have. But I think at the end of the day, there is nuance. Oh, and the best part, the part that really got me intrigued, besides the neuroregenerative and anti-inflammatory impacts on the brain and its impacts on pain and its impacts on our immune system, and the protective, when I started talking about the data that I found from 2021 on the protective mechanism of semaglutide against COVID, I got deplatformed at 232,000 off Instagram. And there's data that came out last year showing it's correlative, it's not causative, but showing potential protective benefit against cancer. This is all data that's published, and, things got a little heated at that point. I think I got in the crosshairs of big pharma, I don't know. But all of this to say, I think there's, extreme potential for alcohol abuse syndrome, addiction, anything that's going off that dopamine dragon, as I call it. Those dopaminergic pathways are impacted, and we've now got all the data to support everything I was either had found or was speculating or had only had animal data on. We now have human data on most of it. And I just think there's a place for them. And I think
Yeah.
that they need to be done appropriately like any other peptide. And I don't think it's a monotherapy, like take high doses, good luck. I think obviously lifestyle is always number one. And I've been preaching metabolic health since day one. So I don't know how that message has gotten skewed. I'm not a big pharma shill. I may go to the fucking gym and eat enough protein and get your shit together person. And then we have tools.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna use all the tools that I want to use that I have accessible to me, and I can prescribe in Oregon, so I'm going to use my prescription abilities. We have no problem. I was thinking about it in the shower this morning, like, somebody in the MAHA movement was saying something about how they prefer food over big pharma, and I was like, this is really choice coming from I'm not bashing the MAHA movement, it's just it's a generalized statement I'm making. It's really choice to me that people are okay with having their, thyroid hormone compounded or their hormone replacement, or because I could make an argument that most hormonal issues, aside from ovarian failure at menopause, most hormonal issues are lifestyle in nature. Like we burn out our thyroids, we burn out our hormones and when we're younger. And I could also make an argument that folks need for high blood pressure medication and statins are also lifestyle. I could make those arguments all day, but we don't vilify those people.
Yeah.
And then my best part was last night, I see a huge influencer who has been bashing on a doctor who's been bashing on GLP-1s and Ozempic for a year on every podcast he could get on himself on. And then he does a freaking reel on the benefits of BPC 157 because you can buy it in a pill and he can sell it to you.
Oh, I saw that one actually.
And I'm like, really? I
Yeah.
commented on it. I'm like, that's interesting because I know of a peptide that you've been bashing on that's also anti-inflammatory, healing, and regenerative. But
Yeah.
that one's not okay. It doesn't fit the storyline.
Well, I think that's the interesting part. It's like, um, when we become these like mono thinking individuals where we label ourselves anything, whether it's maha or whether it's pharma or whether, and we cannot deviate from our cultural group, I think we get into a big problem.
It's
And so
huge.
I never really trust someone who hasn't pushed back against not only the other side, but their side, because you have to be willing to do both in order to have like a reasonable, rational debate. Now, when you got deplatformed, why do you think that happened? Like,
Well, that was the month that Eli Lilly released their vials. So they had Zepbound is the brand name for the. So we've got semaglutide, which is made by Novo Nordisk, and semaglutide comes in Ozempic or Wegovy.
yeah,
Ozempic is FDA approved for type 2. Wegovy is approved for weight loss. On the Eli Lilly side, we have Mounjaro, and that would be Mounjaro is for type 2 FDA approved, and Zepbound is their version. Same thing, same peptides. They're just, well, these two are different, but you get what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
They're just approved for different things. They came out with their vials that month, actually that week, I think. And they had sent a lot of cease and desist letters to the telemedicine companies, the compounding pharmacists, the many doctors who were prescribing compounded. They really have, and Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have been pushing very hard against the compounded. And at that time, I have been proposing microdoses or
Yeah.
a more personalized dosing strategy, I think would be a better term. And meaning that the starting dose, if you even if you're dealing with type 2 diabetes or obesity and that's what you're using it for, I think the starting dose in many cases can be too high and non-tolerable to many people. And
Mm.
so if you do want to escalate somebody up to those therapeutic doses, then consider, big pharma, consider a lower dose. People shouldn't have to lay on the couch for a month vomiting profusely to
Exactly.
onboard a medication or a peptide, right? But on the other side, I was talking about using very potentially, like for someone like yourself who's metabolically very optimized, you lift weights, you do all the things, right? You get your sleep, you get your protein in, you do all the things. If you were coming to me saying, I've got this neurologic issue or I've got um, any number of things, PCOS, fertility issues, we are allowed to use things off label. And so in those cases, my husband has high blood pressure and he's got cardiovascular disease in his family. So in those cases, we would use these peptides potentially preventatively or in very minuscule doses because you
Mhm.
would not tolerate usually anywhere near the standard starting dose. And anyway, all that to say, that week, everybody was getting letters and I got deplatformed. So I speculate. I do not know. I don't have any proof, but I
Yeah.
speculate I kind of got caught up in the crosshairs there, I think.
Yeah.
Because did have a girlfriend who has a decent size account who comes out and says very, like, she tells you how to dose, where to get it, not even prescription. Like, she's making claims that I think were way riskier than anything I would ever say publicly or even
Mhm.
on the internet for that matter. And she got suspended that week as well, her account. And when she was allowed to appeal, I was not. And when she appealed, she was allowed to find out who reported her, and it was Eli Lilly. And it was the day after my account went down.
I didn't know you could do that.
Well, they didn't give me any option. I was just gone.
Interesting. I got a guy next time if anything happens to
Okay.
you.
I literally asked everyone I knew. I'm like, somebody has to know someone at Meta. You know who I think knew someone at Meta? I think it might have been Jen Cohen. I don't know if you know Jen Cohen, but
Yeah.
she's a cool chick too. And
Yeah.
I owe her a lot, I think. Anyway, that was all crazy.
What's
It was
so
crazy.
so basically to understand, they don't want you recommending these
Mm.
non-prescription. It's like a white label versus their Eli Lilly label. And so they're basically saying you can't do this other thing over here that's not ours.
I don't think they want compounding pharmacies. And I never really was. It's like, however you can access it. In fact, there's a
Yeah.
paper that came out this.
Because compounding pharmacies don't use Eli Lilly's formula,
Yes,
so they don't
correct.
have to pay them licensing.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
And so
correct.
because if I understand this correct, like what do they have that is patented in this? Like what are compounders not allowed to use or allowed to use?
I don't know all the details. I know that there's 503A and 503B in the compounding world. And I'm not a compounding pharmacist, so I'm not an expert in this, but there is a clause that came into being in the early 2000s or 2000s and teens. Yeah, it was like 2013, I think. It was when I was in practice that compounding pharmacists could fill the need on a shortage.
Interesting.
And that's a 503B. And I don't know if those are more identical to the brand name or not, but these two peptides have been in shortage for a long time. And so 503B compounding pharmacies were filling that need. And now there's a big lawsuits going on because supposedly they're out of shortage and it's a whole thing. I don't pretend to follow it all completely, or understand it all. But now it's going to go back to 503A, which is less there's less oversight on 503A. So them pushing against this compounding might be pushing it into even a less, you know, I don't want to say
Regulated?
less safe.
Yeah.
That's not the right word, but there's going to be even less oversight on how these are manufactured in different pharmacies than they were before. So I don't know. I'm trying to stay out of the whole mess. I was really excited this last month, in March actually. An article came out in the Journal of Diabetes showing that you could actually take the pens because this is the big thing. The brand names are in pens and they're pre-filled, they're pre-dosed.
Oh, so you can't change the dose.
Yes, that's the problem. I should have said that early on. The compounding come in vials and you can pull up what you want. So you can
Yeah.
have a more personalized approach. So the pens, though, this paper was published and they were talking about using it in smaller doses. They called, it's like microdosing has made it mainstream and I'm nowhere in the conversation, but that's okay. Because I'm not talking about it for weight loss. I'm trying to talk about it for other things. But they came out with this paper showing microdosing for type 2 diabetes. You can start people at a lower dose and you can actually use this pen click method with the brand name pens. So that should make Big Pharma happy because their product is still being used.
Yep.
But depending on how, and they have a whole chart in the study. Anyone can go look it up. I can give you the link to put in the show notes. There's a whole
Great.
chart on how to use the pen click method to get the appropriate dosage if somebody can't tolerate the dose or if somebody needs something more personalized.
Yeah, which is brilliant because I have some friends that, by all intents and practices, they probably did need help from some sort of GLP-1, I guess they're called.
Yeah.
And so, but they got so sick
Yeah.
from the first usage that yes, they started losing weight. But if we already think that GLP-1s might cause some lean muscle mass, and then they're so sick they can't function or weight lift or do anything else,
Yeah.
that's got to exacerbate it.
Yeah. It's
right?
not good.
Interesting. So are these things then something that you get stuck on for life? Like, does this become another type of just lifetime drug that's great for pharmaceuticals and not great for individuals?
That's a good question. And I think that people don't understand the functional medicine approach versus the allopathic approach. In allopathic medicine, you have a condition. The standard of care is to prescribe X, Y, or Z drugs for said condition. This is why doctors aren't MDs traditionally trained are not keen on running a bunch of functional lab tests because they're responsible legally for whatever comes up on that lab result. Okay, so they need to prescribe based on standard of care, whatever drug is appropriate that has been deemed the standard of care. You show up with high blood pressure, they must put you on a blood pressure medication.
Wow.
If they're going to go, it depends on what state they're in because some boards are a little, more rigorous than others. But like in Oregon, for instance, MDs don't do well prescribing desiccated thyroid, which is a prescription, but naturopathic doctors can. MDs don't prescribe ivermectin for COVID, but naturopathic doctors could because naturopathic doctors, we are not under standard of care. We're under best practices. There is a standard. We can't go rogue and do random shit, but we actually have to know more. We have to know what the standard of care is. We have to present it to the patient, and then we have to present them all our alternatives, which are the other options that we would bring to the table. So anyway, all that to say, the way that I do things with peptides in general is I cycle them. We cycle them. We go on and off of them. We use them as a tool for a time. I
Yep.
do that with drugs too, though. Like Prozac, for instance, it was never studied long term for depression. It was studied to be implemented as basically like an emergency shoot when you're going through a terrible time period. You use it during a window. Maybe you have a divorce or a death in the family and you're devastated. These are window, and I like to think of most drugs as hormones we generally tend to need to stay on, but I cycle those too. So I think it depends on the individual. I think there are people living with I do believe there is a disease of obesity. I don't think every obese person has the disease, and I don't think everybody with the disease is obese.
Mhm.
But I do think there is the disease of obesity, and I do think that for some of those folks, yes. But I don't think that anybody even has the right to start a GLP-1 if they also aren't going to the gym and lifting weights. And they're not also hitting their macros, their protein macros. So my argument from day one has been, it's not the peptide's fault. It's a dosing and management issue.
Yeah.
Like, and I hate to diss on the doctors because we all went to medical school and racked up tremendous, huge bills, not because we were waiting to get rich. There are not rich doctors. Do you know any rich doctors?
No,
There
like
might be
compounding pharmacy owners, some of them.
yeah, but there's a few like plastic surgeons, et cetera, that are
Yeah, for
doing well,
sure.
but most people don't go into medicine to they're not greedy assholes. We don't
No.
give up a huge chunk of our life.
No, you can't get rich quick either at it.
Yes,
You could get rich
exactly.
very, very slowly
Slowly.
over decades.
Right. So anyway, all that to say, people seem to think that the greedy doctors, so I hate to throw them under the bus, but many of them are getting into areas that maybe aren't their strongest wheelhouse. And so they know nothing about how to manage or help somebody with metabolic dysfunction. And yet they're throwing peptides at them, and they're doing what the studies tell them to escalate the dose quickly and aggressively. And so these people are getting put on these high doses very quickly, which I think at the end of the day is going to be catastrophic because the muscle loss, and I've said this in the past, I want to add something here. Yes, when you put anybody on a low calorie diet and you severely calorically restrict, or you do gastric bypass and you malnourish them, basically, they're going to have lean mass loss. And it's on par with the percentage. It's the same. I will say though, these peptides, these GLP-1s, they rev that AMPK pathway, which I said earlier is catabolic. So I think at the end of the day, these folks that are on high doses that are doing nothing else and are not doing any lifestyle changes are going to find themselves perpetually on them for the rest of their life. And if they ever go off of them, they are now like melted candles.
Oof.
They've got very severe wasting that has occurred throughout their lean tissue, and including their muscle mass, which is your metabolic engine. And it's a disaster. And now they're sitting in a very brittle diabetic state so they're masking and they're, dare I say, overdosing, but that might be the problem.
Interesting. Is
I
it
don't know if that answers the
It
question.
does, and opens up so many more. Am I dumb for not knowing that standard of care meant that doctors really have to do it this way, or they basically open themselves up to risk is the way
Yes,
that I
that's
take that.
correct.
Is that like common knowledge?
No.
And so, because I often think with doctors, and to your point, I'm giving them a hard time. Like, I'm like, why don't you tell people to eat healthier? Like, why are you putting my dad on this blood pressure medicine nonstop for 40 years and he has a big tummy, and not telling him, like, stop with, he loves Mexican food, like, stop with this, get to the gym, you need to be lifting more. Why does that never come up? But I think it makes a lot of sense if actually there is a perverse incentive for them, and it's not even the doctor's fault. It's not that they wanna get a kickback from a drug company all the time.
There's no kick there, and that's the other thing. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I was in practice for 10 years, in a big clinical setting, and, nobody came knocking with a check when I wrote a prescription. There's no there might be companies that are courting doctors, maybe sending them on trips, and they have
Yeah,
to disclose this too. You can
yeah,
legally look that up, but it's not
sure.
like you write a prescription and you get it's not,
Yeah,
that's not, and maybe there's some off record deals going on I don't know about, but no. And also they are time constrained. So if they're back in 1995 when I was working at a hospital in Portland, I was an undergrad, I wanted to be a doctor. And this is why I went ND instead of MD route, because this MD came in and he was a neurologist and we were in the Alzheimer's and dementia clinic doing
mhm.
research. And he said that at that time in 95, if he spent more than 7 minutes in a room with a patient, he was losing money. So they can't tell your dad how to eat right, and they're not lifting themselves, they're train wrecks.
Yeah,
Most doctors have fatty liver themselves, so they tell you, "Oh, your labs are normal, you have some fatty liver, that's okay." It's like, "No, it's not okay. Your liver is literally going to be cirrhotic in 10, 20 years." Like, this is maybe a little longer, depends on the person and how much alcohol they're drinking, but it's just bizarro land to me that we've got, mediocre health folks, but to their defense, their lives are incredibly stressful.
yep,
So there's a lot of going up against doctors, and we really do trash on them way too often, and I
yeah.
don't love it. Um, they're they're wheels in a car or whatever the term is.
Cogs in
They're
a wheel.
yeah, they're
Yep.
just in a system that is, I believe, quite corrupt and
Yeah.
misguided.
Well, it's interesting. It's close to my heart right now because my brother has just really been struggling with he got his gallbladder out when he was like 13 or something. And he had like cyclical vomiting syndrome
Oh no.
and has had all of these health issues. But the answer from a lot of medical professionals has been, all right, let's put you on anti-anxiety medication. Let's put you on an antidepressant. Are you depressed? Let's do this. And I'm like, I just watched the kid drink a Arnold Palmer with half lemonade in it and eat a big thing of meatloaf. Like, could we stop? If he already can't process stuff, if his gut is messed up, if he's vomiting all the time, should we start with something else? And then, kind of telling him that it didn't matter if he drank sometimes.
Yeah.
And at some point, I really feel for like the families and everybody involved because you get to a certain point too with him where I'm like, bud, you're a grown man. This is your path.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to figure it out. And I'm here to support you if and when you're ready to listen. But I can't fucking tell you the same thing anymore. And so I bet doctors often are like, listen, I've been telling you to also work out for 72
Yeah.
years. You haven't been. So here's the blood pressure medication so you don't actually die.
Yes.
But also, could you do the other things too?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of that going on, but
Yeah.
probably, not a lot of us always listen to the doctor.
And it takes time. Patients can get hostile and aggressive, and even people were coming to me as a naturopathic physician in a cash-based practice. I did not take insurance, so they knew exactly what they were getting into. Like, they sought me out specifically for that in a
Yeah.
town where all the NDs take insurance, and they still would fight me tooth and nail. And they
Interesting.
would get mad at me, hostile, angry if their labs showed up all of a sudden they're diabetic, and I'm like, "Dude, I've been telling you for 10 years what was coming, and then suddenly here it is," and, like, grown men getting up out of their chair yelling at me, terrifying
Wow.
me
Oh,
because they're so mad. Like, it's crazy. Medicine's crazy. It's why I shut my practice down. Like, I take clients and patients very rarely these days because it's just you go in circles. It's online's one thing. I'm beating the drum constantly, repeating myself like a
yeah.
robot because I'm trying to get it to land and I'm trying to find new ways to say it so it'll land. And that's frustrating enough because then you're
Yeah.
just dealing with, ignorant trolls. But in clinical practice, when someone's paying you a clip of money,
Yeah.
you're not the cheapest doc in town and they're still yelling at you when you're telling them
Yeah.
to go to the gym, and it's tough. It's a tough gig, but for your brother's sake, some digestive enzymes, some ox bile, and
That's what I told him.
some HCl would go a long way.
HCl. You know what? Gabrielle
Ox
Lyons said
bile.
ox bile too. And I
Yeah.
told him and he said it sounded gross. And so we're working with him on that. I'm like, it's a pill.
Does he
You don't
like
taste anything.
does he like carnivore stuff? Does he like that scene at all?
You know what? I think at this point,
Because there's
sadly, he's at that point where, when you just don't have any other options and your health has gotten to a level where it is the only thing that matters and you
yeah,
realize that everybody else can have 100 problems, but you only got one. That's where he's at.
yeah,
And so with him right now, it's really, all right, man, like this is your moment. And it's a bummer, that I haven't known how to get through to him prior to this. But I think he's at that moment where he's willing to listen. And so, I'd be curious your take too. How, have you found like if somebody is at that point where they're like, God, I'm I'm here and it's hard and I know I have to make massive health changes, what would you tell them? How do you get somebody to even start truly prioritizing their health when they realize that they have no other choice but to?
It comes down to pain and vanity or
Mm.
vanity. So when people hit a wall on one of those, they usually will be, I mean, I've had to multiple times. I recently got back some very concerning labs. I knew I was burning the candle at all ends and I was like,
Mm.
I'm fine, I'll be okay.
Mhm.
And then I get my labs back and I'm like, oh, my thyroid's on fire. It's not okay, right? I've got to make some severe changes. I've got to
Yeah.
restructure my business and restructure my life. It's one step at a time. I really do think the answer's in the gym, though. I think
Mhm.
the ritual of committing to that process of going 3 days a week, it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. It's just I lift 3 days a week. Going to the gym at a scheduled time or hiring that trainer if you can. I think that's great money invested if you can hire a personal trainer who knows
Mhm.
what they're doing and committing to that process because that process begets the other processes. So when you're training, you will automatically start to reprioritize what you put in your mouth because you
Mm.
work too hard in the gym to sacrifice and ruin the opportunity for that muscle protein synthesis. So you're like, I'm going to eat better. You hydrate more. You're tired, so you go to bed.
Mhm.
You start to make these incremental changes around the one goal of building muscle. And so if
Mm.
getting stronger is the goal physically, and maybe vanity is what's driving it, maybe pain's driving it, but either way, you're not going to get out of here alive or in very good shape if you don't have muscle. So if that becomes, I joke like the answer's in the gym and on your plate. Stage 1. Like, that's it. My mom to this day, every time she asks, "I have a friend who has this whatever condition." I'm like, "Mom, what has my answer been for 20 years? Eat more meat and lift weights." I'm like, "Yes, Mom. Tell 85-year-old Peggy to eat more meat and lift weights. She will feel better."
Why do you think we don't listen to that?
It's
Like,
too easy. They want sexy. They want the GLP-1.
yeah.
I mean, I came out gunning on GLP-1s, and it wasn't that I was trying to promote GLP-1s. I was trying to promote metabolic health. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Hey guys, we have something that might help." Because even with my best intentions, at 50 years old, my metabolic health was starting to become compromised because of chronic stress. There's not much I can do outside. I'm doing the gym, I'm doing the food, I'm doing all the things. And I was starting to have that 15, 20 pounds here. So
Yeah.
I found a peptide that can help, and it also helps with my autoimmune disease, and it also helps with my brain fog, and it helps with my mood. Anyway, all that to say, I was just putting lipstick on a pig. I was still trying to promote the message of metabolic health, which is all the things, which I know feels daunting for someone like your brother, but just even prioritizing what goes in his mouth,
Yeah.
because this is the direct route to the shoot.
Yeah.
Like it's like putting something inflammatory on an open wound. Like, why would you do that? You
Yeah.
wouldn't put acid or salt. I mean, maybe salt will dry it out, but you wouldn't put acid on your
Open
open
wound.
wound. And yet,
Mm-mm.
when we have gastrointestinal issues, we're continuing to crush Chick-fil-A and wonder what the heck's going wrong, right? Like
Yep.
so that he has to hit a wall. It has to get really uncomfortable for him. And
Yeah.
then he'll just inherently know what to do because we have instincts and humans have instincts that tell them what's right and wrong. It's just a matter of like, the other night I was like, damn it, I can't eat corn. I know I can't eat corn. And those damn masa chips, have you tried
Oh, yeah,
those?
they're delicious.
They
They're filled
sent
with
me like
corn.
a whole package
Oh,
and I
no.
started crushing them and I'm getting puffy and bloated. And that's right when I ran my labs and all my inflammatory markers are elevated, like just
Interesting.
barely.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's the freaking corn chips I've been feasting on. I can't. My daughter's like, Mom, we can't eat corn. Corn makes me break out. It makes you crazy. And I was like, I know,
It makes you
but they were
crazy.
so yummy.
Well, I think that is the process. It's also, I mean, I always thought it was a little crazy in the beginning when some of the presidents would talk about how they just wear the same thing every day and they lay it out at the end of the day
Yeah.
and they would put it on in the morning because I think this thing of decision fatigue is
Yes.
so real. And so even a doctor who knows all the reasons why not to do something specifically for your body, at the end of the day, you're tired, you're hungry, you don't have any willpower left, and the decision fatigue kicks in. And I think, it's a good reminder in being human. Maybe my last question for you is I think there's probably a lot of people out there too who, like, you're listening right now and you recognize your family member sounds like my brother, or it sounds like, some of your patients. How do you support somebody when you don't want, how do you support somebody when you want them to be healthier than they are willing to want for themselves?
All you can do is model it.
Mm.
I really have firmly come to that conclusion because I have family members too. People don't believe me, but I have very close family members who you wouldn't believe the health issues they have that are so solvable with lifestyle, and they just won't listen to me. They only come to me when there's an emergency.
Yeah.
And then I have to bail them out. And then I'm pissed because I'm like, if you had been doing any of the things I had been telling you to do, we wouldn't be in this position right now.
Yeah.
So the best that I can do, I've realized, is just to model it
Yeah.
and to live it, because the only way out is through. No one's coming to save you. The government's not going to save you. Your mom's not going to save you. Your sister's not going to save you. Your doctor's not going to save you. Truly, like if you're not putting in the work, especially as we age, especially as that wiggle room becomes less and less and less, and the faults become glaring. Like the diabetes isn't just mild blood sugar dysregulation anymore. It becomes full bore. And now you've got all this other shit to deal with. You can't pull people out of that.
Yeah.
You couldn't even pull your husband out of that. I
Yeah.
mean, without threat of divorce, sometimes people
Yeah.
are struggling. So model it, walk the talk, be the person, and hopefully they'll come around.
And do some fucking deadlifts.
It solves a lot of problems.
I know what I'm doing tonight. I don't know about anybody else, but I only deadlift from here on out, basically. I do love the feeling of a deadlift though. Even like if I don't go that heavy and I
Oh,
do
yeah.
like handheld weights, little barbell deadlift.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm into it. So I agree. Okay. The last thing I wanted to leave with here is, our audience has a ton of like high performers in it. So like people who just want their life to be better. They want to hit their peak performance. They're listening and wondering like, what's that like little extra that I should do too? We've talked about a lot of chronic disease, but where would you leave people with if they're already like, I'm doing pretty good. Like I'm crushing it over here. What studies have you seen or what information would you give to somebody who is out there like, I just want to be even better than I am today?
The two biggest things because that's been predominantly my patient base. The two biggest things would be, number one, keep an eye on your hormones and get them handled before you think you need to. And that is different for everyone. That might be in your 30s, that might be in your 40s, but find somebody who's hormone literate and get that handled before you think you need to, because when it creeps up onto you, it's pretty subtle until you fall off the cliff. And it could be something like COVID or a big stressor or something that throws you off the cliff. And so having that dialed in, I think, is the ticket. I've been on hormones since my 30s. And when people say, you look great, I'm like, I shouldn't look great. I mean, I shared with you how unhealthy I was when I was a teen, but I think the hormones since the 30s have been, little bits here and there. I love the peptides for that as well. So become peptide literate.
Yeah.
Educate yourself as best you can, because you're only going to get so far with any practitioner. So you need to have a basic handle on nutrition and fitness. Like that's a skill you need to learn, is how to navigate the gym. And then I think the last thing is really watching your stress, because stress will erode all your best efforts despite how much intention you're putting into all of the good things. Stress will destroy your metabolism. It will destroy your beauty. I don't drink. I drink very rarely now. And somebody asked me the other day, she said, why'd you quit drinking? I'm like, because it makes me ugly. So vanity has been vanity and pain. I live with a lot of chronic pain too. So I think it's just navigating your life, because what I see happen is these folks get to their mid to late 40s and then all of a sudden the wheels start falling off the car. And if they don't go into that with muscle and they don't go into that with some semblance of decent eating habits, it can happen very quickly. And so that's that miracle spot of like 45 to 50. Do not fuck around. Start getting serious about, we got to let some things go. We got to reprioritize. But if you want good, I think, good erectile function is key. Good libido, good sleep habits. Those are markers for good health. If your sleep starts falling apart as a woman, if your libido completely bottoms out, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Go get yourself handled.
Where are all the best places to follow Dr. Tina?
So I have a podcast. I would love for you to come on.
Love it.
Actually,
Love to.
yeah, I have a great podcast I love doing. I'm on Instagram.
What is the podcast called?
It's called The Dr. Tina Show. Very original. DRTYNA. If you go to my website, drtina.com, I've got a free 4-part video series all about GLP-1s done right, where I dive deep into each video and I give you the science on a whole different story you probably haven't heard, which I think everybody should listen to because you will end up with someone you love on these peptides. So you might as well become literate on it. I have a bigger course if people are interested, especially healthcare practitioners. And then I think I'm mostly on Instagram.
Yeah, I like your Instagram videos. I was
Thank
just
you.
going through them yesterday.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? It's perfectly tailored, bite-sized pieces of information, exactly what you need, nothing that you don't. And for somebody like myself in health, that's what I can handle. That's my microdosing of, information for help. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So fun.
So now you can read your
Okay.
letter to your young self.
It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day. Okay. Dear Tina, I'm going to cry. Does everyone cry when they do this?
I cried when I did it.
Don't stress so much. Don't starve yourself so much of like everything. Do find the gym and learn to use it as therapy. Do seek joy as often as possible. Life is short. YOLO. Love, Tina.
Oh, I love it. I like her too. Thank you so much. We're going to do something cool with this for you too.
Okay. Now you made me cry.
No, well, thank you for sharing. Again, it's a reminder like, man, we got to have so much love for those younger versions of us and we don't do it enough.
Oh, I just turned 51 and I was like, I have been grinding for so long. I have not had nearly the amount of fun that I should have had. Like I don't have as many years in front of me as I have behind me, maybe. And I need to have some fun. Like there was just stress and work and grind and stress and work. And I was like, that's not going to get me anywhere.
No.
It's done. Like I have to actually learn to shut off and enjoy what I built.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like that's the next evolution.
Yeah.
So next time you come back on the podcast, I'm going to have to bother you about what fun you've had. And
Hold me
tell your
accountable.
husband. I'm going to hold him accountable too.
Yes.
Dr. Tina, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
If you liked this podcast today, do me a favor, like and subscribe. It turns out that even though some of you come back and listen every single week, more than 60% of you aren't subscribed, which means that we don't get to be best buds on the internet, learning more from one another about the things that you care about every single day. So I would love for you to be along on our ride, like and subscribe for the channel. That is how we continue to get bigger and better guests for you. Also, leave me a comment about who you want to have on here next. I read every single one of them. Until next week, guys. There is so much. If you think it, you will get it. But I still don't think it's going to fix everything for me.
No. I mean, listen, whatever you think about consistently, you tend to manifest in your life. But there are other things beyond just that one force of what you want. To think otherwise is think you're the center of the universe, which is absurd to me. So you're saying the law of attraction is bullshit? I said, no, law of attraction is real. It's one of dozens of laws. And you're saying that's the whole game?
I'm sitting down with the iconic Tony Robbins, modern day philosopher, author. If you're sick of the platitudes and the manifesting and unable to build a tactical, sustainable daily approach to improving your life, today's episode is for you. Stop creating flimsy New Year's resolutions. Change your life for real today with me. So many people feel like they can't say the thing that might actually help because it might hurt somebody's feelings.
Where did we get up this thing that you're not supposed to offend anybody? If you're not going to offend anybody, you're not going to have any impact. Sometimes you got to do what's uncomfortable. Otherwise, you're just making yourself feel good. I can make myself feel good and go, gosh, that's so horrible. I understand. And F that. Some part of you wants transformation or you wouldn't be in my presence. And it's going to happen. We all tell ourselves stories about things. Our narrative of our life controls our life more than anything else. So you have to divorce your limitations and marry the truth of your unlimited ability.
What are the biggest lies that we are told because it seems nice instead of true today? Okay, I want to talk about a million things with you. I've been so excited to have this conversation.
Great to have you.
Thanks for taking the time. I want to talk about a thing that I used to think was touchy-feely. And then actually you were one of the first guys that made me realize you could have all the tools, all the tactics, all the metrics. But if you don't have your mind right, none of it'll work.
Right.
And one of the things that I love about you is you've beaten into my mind that peak performance starts with mindset.
Yes.
And that is not actually a touchy-feely thing. But you've also hinted that in some ways, there's something that comes before mindset. And why is the order of that so important?
This actually came because this is going to be my 49th year. I've traveled the earth at a really unique time. I've been in every single major country in the world. I have clients in every country of the world. So 193 countries, give you an idea. Wow. And so after a while, you recognize patterns. And one of the patterns that I began to recognize is what creates a breakthrough. Because I'm interested not in just managing something or making it better. I want to scale something. I want to see it grow. So, or a breakthrough in your personal life. Same thing. Somebody's going along and they try to change, don't follow through, try to change, don't follow through, beat themselves up. Like, what is the difference between the person who beat themselves up and the time when he or she finally broke through? And what I found is there's actually 3 elements to it. And the reason most people fail to have a breakthrough, I experience, is that they go after them in the wrong sequence. It's kind of like if you know the right numbers to a vault and you put them in the wrong order, you don't get the treasure, right? Same thing with your phone number. You don't reach the person. So I'll give you the 3 S's to a breakthrough. The first one is not the most valuable one. It's the first one people go for. It's strategy. Now, for you and I, strategy seems like the most natural thing to go for. If I want to achieve something, how do I do it? That's the number one question, right? But the problem with asking, how do I do it, is if you've never done it before, most people then go into what I call the tyranny of how. The tyranny of how is like, have you ever done this? Set a goal, maybe when you're really young. I'm going to do this. You maybe even told people you're going to do this, and this voice in your head goes, who are you kidding, right? Because what happens is you start to doubt because you have no reference base. You have no experience. And so when you're uncertain, you don't follow through. You look at a peak performer, what makes them a peak performer, if you watch them going down that court in the NBA or NFL or whatever sport it may be, you feel this relentless energy. There's not an ounce of hesitancy. There's absolute certainty. That doesn't guarantee success, but it increases the probability through the roof. When you focus on something you know how to do, the doubts show up. And then the second thing that happens is, I'll give you an example. Let's take a simplistic piece. 70% of Americans are overweight, right? We're the fattest country in the history of the world. We're infecting every other country with our dietary patterns, and people around the world are getting more and more ill. But is the secret to being fit and healthy like so complex that you only need super intelligent people to understand? Is it that it costs so much to learn that technology? Is it special only for the 0.1% of the population? No, the strategy of how to be fit and healthy, there's a million different strategies. There's not even just one. And they'll all work to a certain extent. Some are better than others, obviously. So it's not a strategy problem. Now, it's possible. I remember it's about 15 years ago, Time magazine had the cover of the magazine. It was the Atkins diet. And they said 14% of Americans are on the Atkins diet. Well, if you're on the Atkins diet, hopefully you woke up at some point and went, if anything makes my breath smell this bad and I got to pee on a stick so I got so much acid in my body, probably is not sustainable. But everybody did it. It worked for a short time. They went and did the piece to make it work. So some people did have the wrong strategy, but the real problem is the second S. I'm moving backwards in order of importance, meaning strategy is the least important, even though I consider myself a strategist. I know the right strategy could save you 10 years in your business. The right strategy could save you months in terms of turning your weight around or transforming a relationship. It could be minutes, right, if you have the right strategy. But people don't use the strategy because the second S gets in the way, which is their story. The story, we all tell ourselves stories about things. Our narrative of our life controls our life more than anything else. And all the story is a set of beliefs. And beliefs are nothing but things we've told ourselves over and over again with so much certainty that now we believe them. Like, for example, for yourself, if I can ask, can you think of any belief you may have had 10, 15 years ago that back then you would have fought for that belief, but today you're almost embarrassed you had that belief?
Yes.
Right? Most people can. So the fact that you believe it doesn't mean it's true. It just means you're certain. And so most people have certainty about what won't work. So let's take the example of fitness again. So why you ask that person who's 35 pounds overweight, how come you're overweight? Well, I've tried, what will he say? I've tried
everything.
That's right, everything. And I look at him and I say, with all due respect, you haven't tried everything. Yes, I have. I've tried thousands of things. Okay, name them. And then they'll go, well, I've tried, hundreds of things. Name them. Well, I've tried these 2 things that don't work over and over again is what it'll come down to, right? And they call that everything, right? So the story keeps them to do it. You're not in a relationship. You don't have a relationship. You say you want one. Why aren't you in one? Well, the good ones are all taken. They're gone. Or they're gay and I'm not. Or I'm gay and they're not, right? It's not true. It's just not true. But the story controls what you're willing to do or not do because it's a belief and beliefs control actions, right? So even if you have the right strategy, if your story doesn't support it, have you ever been with somebody and you were, let's say, trying to help them and you've got lots of skill. And so you're showing, hey, here's what you can do to take on small businesses and build a real mini empire for yourself, right? And you can do it with businesses people aren't competing you for and you can earn great cash flow and it's not sexy, but it's very successful. Well, let me show you how. And you can put all that in front of them and they're just like, no, that's not going to happen. It just won't work for me. You say, no, look, I can show you. I've done it. No, it doesn't work for me. And the more you push on them, then they get more irritated. And the reason they're irritated is they want to hang on to their story, because the deepest fear everybody has, everyone has. Kings I've dealt with and queens, Academy Award winners, Grammy winners, winners of the NFL, the greatest players in history. Everybody has a fear at some point that they're not enough.
Yeah.
Not rich enough, not smart enough, not funny enough, not attractive enough, not playful enough, not something enough. And the deeper fear we have is that we're not enough, we won't be loved. And love is really, it's like the heartbeat of the soul, right? It's the essence, it's the oxygen of your soul. So people come up with a story so they can explain it's not that I'm not enough, it's just I have ADHD. Well, so did, Sir Richard Branson. He's done quite well, right? Don't confuse me with the facts. So the story, no matter how good and clear the strategy, and you do a fantastic job, I want to say on the air, I went through your book and I just thought you've made it so clear for people. And I would be doing this myself if I wasn't already as advanced as I've done in terms of size of businesses. If I was looking to start, it's a great way to do it. And in fact, I remembered it now. When I was really like 18, I went to a guy's course called Bizarre Financing. And it was all about how to build these small businesses, right? But I think you've done a more thorough job. But the point is, they're not going to do it if they don't have the right belief structure, right? So you have to divorce your limitations and marry the truth of your unlimited ability. Now, some people get a divorce and then they go visit their divorcee on a regular basis. It's not a good idea. You have to just cut it off and no longer go there. You have to tap into the truth. As corny as it sounds, the truth will set you free. But for most people, they don't have someone to really do that to them. That's what I do. I create environments where that happens. But there is something before that. And that is the first S, the one you should start with, but most people rarely even get to. And that is your state. If you're going to have a breakthrough, it comes from your state. You can think of that as energy, vitality, strength, mental energy, mental fitness, right? All that really means is your mental, emotional state affects the way you perceive everything in life. Have you ever been pissed off at somebody and then you suddenly can remember everything that they ever did that pissed you off?
Of course not, never.
Right? So, and when you're in love, what's wrong with life if you fall totally in love?
Not a damn thing.
Nothing's wrong with it. If we're broken, it doesn't matter, we're in love, right? So your state controls your story. Your story and your state control whether you do anything. If no one showed you how to get the strategy, you'd figure out the strategy. You'd find the way, you'd make the way with the right state. So all the work I've done most of my life, I realized was start with a state, because everywhere else you're starting, you're paying, you could teach them the best tools in the world. They won't follow through. If I start with a story, it's easy to shift their belief, and then I can teach them the tools. But if you don't do it in that order, people get very, very frustrated. If you do it in that order, it becomes very, very easy. Like, for example, think about this. Somebody says to you, okay, I know, I got to go on a diet. I got to exercise. I'm going to do it. I'm really going to do it. Is it going to happen?
No.
It's not going to happen in a million years because the state they're in. Most people are trying to get themselves to do something. And what they don't understand is what you do is based on your state. And what do you think is harder, for example, dieting or fasting?
Dieting.
Yes, very much so.
Absolutism. Because fasting is absolute. You just don't do it.
That's
Dieting is like a rule by attrition.
Like, like how this? No, I'm having water. That's nothing, right?
Yeah.
So if you get to that place, that mindset, which is total resolve, that's what it takes to fast. In a state of resolve, it's easy. When you're dieting, you're saying, well, could I do that? What if I could do that? You're negotiating. Negotiation with yourself makes you weak. So the right state, you'll get the right behavior, you'll get the right story, and you'll find the right strategies. And so my focus is first there. And I still do all three, but that's where I go first.
That's so good. It was funny because I was talking to some of our mutual friends, and one of them was like, you should ask him something that you need to change, like get a little vulnerable.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, God, he's seen all the things. I remember watching I Am Not Your Guru back in the day. And you're just like, a woman's life. I don't know what sort of crazy Tony Robbins magic, but you just like magicked her. And I thought about it. I'm a pretty disciplined individual in a lot of ways. But for instance, like small things, this time of year, like I will say, no, I'm definitely not having multiple glasses of red wine and that bread. And then I will do it. But in your mind, the formula, does it just go absolutes? So like, is my next step just, okay, Cody, no red wine ever, no bread, or I have to say it when I'm jumping on a trampoline, or I have to say it when I'm excited. Like, how do I tactically change that?
You need stronger reasons, honey. You don't have strong enough reasons to follow through. So you have reasons in the moment. It's like decision making. Why are most people supposed to make a decision and then they don't follow through? That used to fascinate me too. And what I began to realize is a couple things. Number one, most people don't make a lot of decisions. So they have kind of weak decision-making muscles. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody at dinner at a restaurant and there's a person who's always the last one and they still can't decide. And the waiter or waitress is about to lose it and then they finally decide, right?
Yes, I never hire them. That's actually a
No,
great...
you never hire them in a million years. However, the reason they're not making a decision is they want to make the right decision always. They want to do the right thing. But perfection doesn't exist. It's just not there. So if you look at decision making, I remember I met General Norman Schwarzkopf, who did the original Desert Storm group, and I remember asking him. We were talking about leadership and what's the most important thing in leadership, and he said decision making. And I said, well, how do you make tough decisions? He goes, that's what you're paid for. Any idiot can make the easy decision. What makes you a leader is big decisions.
Yeah.
He said, but to get those big decisions done, you have to have strong enough reasons to follow through, or it won't happen. And he says, if you don't come up with the reasons, the decision doesn't last. And he told me a story I'll never forget. He said that he was a private working for a general. And the general was one of the most powerful. I think he was a 4-star general, a 3-star general at the Pentagon. And very influential man, to say the least. And Pentagon had wrestled with a decision, a strategic decision for the Pentagon as a whole for almost 10 years. And they had people that argued on both sides pretty powerfully, so much so that no one could decide. And so they set a date where they're going to finally make a decision no matter what, and the general's going to make it. And so Schwarzkopf was the private, and he had 5 other guys. Their job was to accumulate all this information from both sides, which he said literally filled almost half a room, and try to bring that down to like 6 binders. The general could go through and really understand both sides of the issue. Well, as they're doing the collation, trying to go through this, which they were completely behind, he said he was getting so scared. And then the general was called out with an emergency, and he had to leave and didn't come back until literally the night before the decision-making process. And so he has no preparatory materials. And he said, I didn't know what the hell to do. I gave the general stuff, but I knew he couldn't possibly do it. He couldn't resolve these. Should I cancel the meeting? He said, no, bring the meeting. He had the meeting. He said, okay, give me side number 1. He said, you have 20 minutes. Give me side number 2, you have 20 minutes. And when they're done, they stood up and he said, do that one. And they all went, yes, General, and they saluted and left the room. But the story's interesting part was, Schwarzkopf, as a private, is thinking, he couldn't possibly know what was the right decision to make that decision. This is insane. And he was so stressed about it that he worked up all his courage, knocked on the general's door, and said, permission to speak freely, sir. He goes, at ease. He goes, General, I know you couldn't possibly review the materials. We couldn't even get you all the materials that are there. You just made a decision that determines the direction of the Pentagon. No one can make that decision for 10 years. You just did it. He goes, that's right. When put in command, take charge. He said, make a decision. He goes, but General, you didn't have enough information. He goes, there was too much information. He said, both sides have been arguing for 10 years. Here's what I know. Whatever decision I made, it'll be right, it'll be wrong. If it's wrong, we'll find out quicker. It won't take us 10 years and we can change our approach. If it's right, we'll be on the right track and we'll move forward immediately.
Wow.
Decisions need to be made. And I thought, what a great approach, right? So later I started studying and I was like, I think decisions have 3 parts. So when you go do yours, you decide not to drink or decide to drink only so many of these elements, drinks, right? A decision can feel a little bit like a war. Oh, I'm going to do this. I get myself to do this, all right, I'm going to do it, right? But it's a 3-part process, and that's what people don't understand. If you decide that's all you do, you're making a decision in the moment. You meant it when you made that decision to yourself. Wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Yeah. So what happened? Later on, you're in a different environment, right? You've not taken the moment and pushed it into the future. What takes that moment, pushed it into the future is if while you're in that moment, you did something that commits you to follow through, where there are consequences if you didn't, significant consequences, right? And that's what the general does, right? So you look at this and go, okay, I say I'm going to do this, but do I got enough reasons? Is this really that important to me? Because if it's not, I want to bullshit myself. I'm not here to lie to myself. If I'm really going to do it, then here's my absolute commitment for the next 30 days. And this is what it costs me if it doesn't, right? And this is what I get. This is why I want to do it. So it's not just a moving away from approach. But I always tell people, never leave the site of making a decision without doing something that commits you to follow through later on. Because you're going to be in a different state again, right? And you're going to make a different decision in that different state at that party that's there. But there's a 3rd step that most people never get to. It's resolve. So think about, what does it mean to you to decide? Tell me what it means to you to decide. What's that feeling when you decide?
It's forward momentum.
Okay.
It's a choice
what does it mean
on path.
to commit?
To not go back. It's there's an anti instead of a
That's right.
a pro.
Now you put a line in the sand that's beyond just this moment. And you've taken what's in the moment, taken it forward. What does it mean to you to resolve?
Like, no matter what we're going to do, we're going to execute on this.
That's right. Resolve means it's already done. You say something is resolved, it's already done. It's done in you, so it's going to be done in the world. And what resolve brings an interesting emotion. Decision-making can be a little battle. Commitment can feel like having to use some force. But resolve brings peace. And then it's like, even if things don't go the way I want, even if it changes here or there, I've resolved this is how it is. So I want you to think of a decision you've made that you did keep your word on. That was a difficult decision. Because the alcohol one's not that difficult, right? I bet you've had some much more difficult decisions you've kept.
Definitely.
Can you tell me one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm divorced and remarried. So I remember when I was going through my divorce, or when I was going through my not so happy marriage the first time, I couldn't make a decision on doing it. And so I said, I'm going to put a date on a calendar. And by that date, I will have done the actions I think will, go to therapy, have lots of conversations, attempt to resolve it.
Yeah.
But if I can't, that will be my date. And by then I will tell him and we will commit.
So listen to what your language is in it. You decided, and in that day you decided, you also committed. You committed to what had to happen in the future by a certain date, by a certain time, and what was going to occur.
Yeah.
Did you get to resolve?
I did.
When did resolve happen? Did it happen that day or later?
No, it happened that day.
So did you feel, what did you feel inside when you resolved it?
Peace.
Peace.
Sadness, but peace.
I understand. Ending something is always sad, but
Yeah.
one of the rules of life that most people are upset about that they don't take, it's a given in life, is everything ends, right? Everything changes. But my view is, and something new begins, right? It's like it's the call of adventure when, the hero's journey, it's there. So I think you either have to decide and commit, ideally resolve, or not kid yourself about it because it may not be that important to you.
Yeah, that's a great
It's
point.
like you might be doing, virtue signaling to yourself. It doesn't sound like you told anybody else, but that's what people do that too. They don't just virtue signal stupidly on social media. They do it to themselves.
Yeah, it's fascinating you say that. My husband is a former Navy SEAL, and so he is so
He knows
committed
how
to
to
his
commit
word.
and resolve.
He does. And one thing that he's taught me lately that has helped the last couple of years is if we make a decision and we are committed to it, he does a thing that now I have a word for it, I guess, which is this idea of commitment and resolve. He'll say, like, for instance, we had something we wanted to do, and he was like, okay, well, what are you going to do if you don't hit that goal?
That's it.
And I said, I don't know. What do you want me to do? What's on the table? We put in cash and put it. And he was like, that's not big enough. And he's like, it not only has to be cash, which would bother you, but something that would bother you so much that you're not going to execute.
That's right.
And so he's like, so if you don't execute on this, we're going to write a check. And on the check, you're going to put $10,000 and you're going to say, Democratic Socialist Party of America. And if you don't do this, I'm sending the check with your name on it and you're going to be on the donor list. And I was like, oh no, now I'm really in it and I have to commit to this. And so now I have a framework. But it's, what's fascinating about you is these little small things in life aren't so small. They accumulate to everything in life. It's this compounding effect.
Decision-making, I think, is one of the top 5 skills in life.
What are the other 4?
I wouldn't lock them in. I'd say managing your state is one of the most important. I think how to build relationships is certainly one of the most important. Your capacity to create a vision for your life is extremely important. Moving from being a manager to a creator is extremely important. Most people are managing their lives. They're making a living. They're not designing their life. Or, even in business, part of what helps you grow in business is when you stop becoming a manager. Managers always want to know techniques. And by the way, I have plenty of techniques I've learned over the years, but I'm much more interested at this stage in my life in what is behind the technique that makes somebody follow through, right? Techniques are cute and they might work, but then eventually the technique becomes your new toy that will become your new limitation, right? So I think it's important to look for what's behind it all. If you shift what's behind it all, you shift everything, right? That's my focus.
Do you ever not keep promises to yourself now?
That's a great question. Yes, there's one that I've not kept to myself. To be honest, it's the only one I can think of. I don't know that I promised myself, honestly, that's the truth. And that is, I'd slow my schedule down.
You're not keeping that. I know that for a fact.
No, you can tell by my voice. No, I've not kept that promise. But honestly, it's like, like I get a phone call last night from a dear friend of mine, and he's got a friend that's suicidal in the middle of the night. And it's like, I get these calls every day. Somebody's got, cancer, somebody's got whatever. And I have such a database of businesses and relationships, in the health area and the relationship area, and the business area, and the finance area, and the emotional well-being area, that I find myself called. And so then I end up being up for 2.5 hours to help this stranger not do those things. And so, but what my wife and I are going to have a meeting this next week, and I'm going to have to take it from decide to commit to resolve, because I think I decided, but I didn't really commit and resolve because I'm so called.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. It's like people have different ways of motivating themselves. I've never been a motivator. I don't even like the term. Motivation is a good thing. It's like a warm bath or shower. You should probably have one every day, but it's not enough, right? You need strategy. You need follow through. But what I'm really interested in is like, what's deeper than that? What's the inner drive in that? And when I look around at what's happening in people's lives, and I say, what? You can think of it as this way. You can think of there's like, let's say, pull motivation and push motivation. Push is what most people use. I'm going to push myself through. I'm going to make this happen. Well, that takes enormous, I would say, inner strength. And you clearly have that. I clearly have that. Inner drive. But everybody's only got so much of that, right? What's unlimited is pull motivation, pull drive. That's something you care about more than yourself, so much more than yourself, that it's not effortful. It gives you an energy that's also almost feels superhuman to other people. And it's because this is what you're made for. And when you find that, it's been said before, the 2 most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you discover what you're born for, right? I know what I'm born for. And so changing that in my life and saying, I'm not going to do that, I have to find somewhere in between the two. I have to find what I am willing to commit to in that process. Well, that's interesting. My first response in my head was, no, of course I keep my word to myself for everything. And the probably still is true, because my word to myself is I will always show up when it matters most for people.
Wow. Yeah, you almost have like a higher priority than you even realized above the sub priority.
Yeah.
Well, it's so timely because you're having an event in January, and I really wanted to I was going to go to your last event, and we're in the mix of all this fertility stuff. And so
I understand.
It's one of the first times where I haven't been able to keep my word as often as I'm used to other people. And it's out of my control for the first time.
I understand.
Owning a business is incredible until a slip-on site or a pissed-off client or a tiny mistake turns into a very expensive problem. If you're not covered, that can actually wipe out months, even years of work. That's why smart owners use Next Insurance. It's coverage built specifically for small businesses, all online, all instant. So no paperwork, no waiting, no corporate runaround nonsense. Whether you run a cleaning crew, a fitness studio, or a business you bought on Main Street, Next keeps you protected so you can keep building. Taking risk is part of the game. Being protected is how you win it. Head to nextinsurance.com/Codie and check them out. I love the idea of this event because, new year, new you. There are all these things around this time of year.
Yes.
But we don't actually keep our promises to ourselves for the most part. And one of the ways that I, in the beginning, maybe thought of you was like, oh, it's positive thinking. We have to positive think. And that is actually the opposite.
No, I don't even believe I don't believe in negative thinking. It doesn't help you. I believe you need to find what's true. And I don't believe you should go to your garden and there's weeds there, so you chant, there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds. It's like, no, reach down and grab the weeds, right? You got to see what's real. You got to see it as is, but also not see it worse than it is. Most people see it worse than it is because they're afraid of failing, so then they don't try, right? And then you got to see it better than it is, because without a vision, people perish, right? You have to have a vision, and then you got to make it that way, and that's where the strategy comes in, right? So that's how I look at it. But no, I've never been into positive thinking per se. When they did the Secret, they came to me to be part of Secret. I said, I will not participate in a million years. This is bullshit. They said, you're saying the law of attraction is bullshit? I said, no, law of attraction is real. It's one of dozens of laws. And you're saying that's the whole game? And I remember this guy was saying, yeah, but I was coming here to talk with you about this. And he said, and I was running late and I thought green, green, green. And I got all green lights. I said, well, what's going to happen when you're coming to see me and you get all red lights? You're going to say you're thinking about it? Are you telling me some person who was in Alcatraz was there, or not Alcatraz, but in Germany, in a concentration camp, that they were just a negative thinker? Sometimes not getting what you want is what the universe or God wants for you. So you develop lessons, skills, muscles, strengths, caring that you wouldn't have had without it. So it's not just that. There's other things like capabilities. There's like skill sets. You can't do that. So I was revolted against that. And I watched it go like this and of course crash, because everybody wants the oversimplistic view of life. But that won't get you results. Just thinking positive is not going to do it. Thinking negative will certainly hurt your life, but that's not the full gig.
No matter how bad I want it, if I go try to one-on-one you on that basketball court, I don't think I'm winning. You got like just a tiny few inches more than I do. But it's important because these days I live in Austin, Texas, and there is so much, if you think it, you will get it. And if you rub this crystal, I brought a crystal, I like a crystal, but I still don't think it's going to fix everything for me.
No. I mean, listen, I think thoughts are real, and whatever you think about consistently, you tend to manifest in your life. But there are other things beyond just that one force of what you want. And to think otherwise is think you're the center of the universe, which is absurd to me, right? If that was true, why wouldn't we just get whatever we want immediately? Well, because you'd be spoiled rotten, you wouldn't care about anything or anyone. I mean, think about it. When you were born, what'd you have to do to be loved?
Nothing.
Scream, yell, go to the bathroom in your pants, throw up all over your mom or your dad. You're still loved, right? But there was a day when that stopped. And that's the day that fear entered your body. That's the day you try to figure out what to do. So because to survive, you need love. Love is where someone puts their needs aside for yours, right? And as humans, we're like different than other animals. Some animals, there's egg, you crack, and you never see your mother and father, but you have some competitive advantage. You have horns, you have teeth, you have camouflage, right? Our competitive advantage is love. And so our capacity to feel that caring allows us to connect, allows us to work with others, allows us to expand beyond what other people can possibly do. And so I look at it and say, okay, if this is our capacity, why is it that we have this unconditional love in the beginning and that everybody pursues it for the rest of their life and rarely feels it? Because if you're unconditional love forever, you'd never grow. You never bring anything to the world. It would all be about me, just like ridiculous. So you have to grow up and realize life's not about you, it's about we. And that the more you contribute, the better. Business is a spiritual game. It's a perfect example. Every religion on earth has some version of love thy neighbor like thyself. Different versions of it, but a version of that principle within it, right? Karma, whatever you want to call it. When you fall in love with your client, not just fall in love with your customer, your product or service, that's going to change. Fall in love with your client and you're trying to do everything you can to meet their needs. And you turn them into a raving fan and you love on them and you think constantly about meeting their needs like a mom does their kid, or like a best friend does for somebody they really care about, you're going to grow in business. You're going to grow anything that you do. But we're not meant to just have unconditional love because then we wouldn't grow, right? We need to grow. We need to expand. And so otherwise, all these stupid thoughts like, oh, I'm just going to think it's going to happen to be there. Plus, if you went to Vegas, what's the worst thing to happen if you go to Vegas?
Well, in this case, maybe lose all your money.
No, the worst thing that can happen is win.
Oh, interesting. Of course.
Yes.
Then you think you're skilled.
Steve Wynn's a good friend of mine. He built most of Las Vegas.
So he
I was with him one day, and this guy won a $10 million jackpot. And Steve is a very tight guy in finance, right? Very tight guy. Like he knows what every one of his retailers is doing, and he wants the maximum dollar for each one. And Louis Vuitton wasn't paying him enough. He'd get very upset. I'm like, you're doing quite fine, right? He says, no, I want to. But when a person won, I saw none of that. So I finally said, Steve, usually you're pretty uptight about something like this. He goes, no, Tony, don't you know? You see all the people around him, see all the pictures? That guy will come back for the rest of his life, but so all these other people. He goes, the odds are my odds. He goes, that makes me money. I'm in it for the long game. That's how it works here. But if you went to Vegas and let's say you pulled one of those Warren bandits and you get the jackpot, what was your response going to be?
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah. Second time.
Probably less excited, but still excited.
100 times every time you get the same victory. Now it's called a job.
That's fascinating.
Right? So we need jackpots in our life to make us feel alive. If you got everything you wanted every moment, you'd be bored out of your mind.
It's such a good point. What's interesting about you is, I think a lot of people struggle with people pleasing, right? And, maybe they try to do things that other people think will make them likable. Yeah. You seem to do the opposite. Like you are so comfortable pushing buttons, saying hard truths, and at least what I've seen publicly, kind of pushing people out of their comfort zone. And I know
I don't do that till they first know how much I care. I earned that right. They see that. I don't just come in like a jerk and go this, because
no, I don't think
really
you come
do.
off that way. But I think that's scary for people, even though
scary.
I do believe a lot of times that's what we need. We need like Chris, my husband calls it a benevolent bully, somebody to push you like you need it.
Yeah.
Have you always been like that? Or how did you learn to push people the way they needed to?
No, I was more of a pleaser growing up. Everyone has a dominant force in their life. My mom was the dominant force. And she was, I had 4 different fathers, so she was the dominant force, as you might guess. She was quite a force of nature, got rid of them one after another. And I learned to please her, or I was quite physical with her. And I was 5'1" in high school. And then even when I grew 10 inches in a year, I learned to bend my hair down so she could grab my hair and smack me against the wall. She was a beautiful woman. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. She was as loving as you could be, but she abused, alcohol and prescription drugs. And when you put those two together, you become a different personality. So I had to work out in my head, how do you deal with someone whose love you crave the most, who's trying to harm you, but loves you, And so rather than go through the whole victim bullshit, there's not any part of me that's ever been a victim. It's like, okay, she's wired with pain and I got to figure out how to, basically I became a practical psychologist because of her. I had to figure out how to manage her states, her emotions, so I could protect my younger brother's 5 years younger, the younger sister 7 years younger. And I got really good at it, as I had to be. But then also with women in my life and relationship in the beginning, I was all pleasing all the time, which is a woman I'm sure you know. It's probably why you married a Navy SEAL. Having a pleaser doesn't please a woman.
No.
Men are confused by that. They're like, she wants me to please him. Yes, she wants to be pleased, but she doesn't want you to be a pleaser. What the F does that mean, right? So I learned that lesson. But even during that time, when I stood up to serve someone, I'm there to serve someone. Yeah. So if I will, at the end of an intervention, you saw, I'm not your guru. There was a moment there where I was working with a young woman who was part of this cult where they raped children and said it was for God. And, she was in such a horrible place. And so I did this work and it's like, I feel like God comes through me in those moments. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, but as you say, it looks like magic and it's different every time. And so afterwards, this group pushed on the door. And I was like, after those things are done, very often I can't show any emotion then because I'm there with them. If I fully feel what they're feeling, I can't help them, but I am feeling it inside. I put it in a box. And then I go to the back room there and then I just start bawling for what this woman's been through. I'm just even thinking now it makes me emotional thinking about it. And the guys that were doing the show said, no, we had to have direct access. And they opened the doors and you see me there crying. And, but it's because, this is what I'm made for. It's like, I hate suffering. I hate to see anyone suffer. And so I am unbelievably committed to end suffering any way I can. But I also know my own suffering will not help that person who's suffering. Mm-hmm. So I need a call to a higher part of them. Mm-hmm. And I can do it in multiple ways. I can do it with humor, I can do it with intensity, I can do it with fun, I can do it being weird, but I will find the way to get them there. And it's different every time. And that's my art. That's where you can call it the universe. I call it God comes through you because you're trying to serve something more than yourself. Mm-hmm. You get different insights. If you're just trying to serve yourself, you get a certain level of insight. If you've got a family you care about, you're trying to serve your family, you get a different level of insight, trying to serve, a community, the world. I don't mean virtue signaling bullshit. I mean, what's in your heart. The level of insights that are given to me that I can't possibly know about a person while they're standing there. Like people think there's a script backstage or people come up, even the guys who are filming, so they went and do you have an earpiece or something? And I was like, what are you talking about? They came and literally checked to see if I had an earpiece. Like, how could you know that about her? And I was like, I just knew, I just knew immediately. So the emotion I go through is enormous. It's not like I'm just cold and this is how it is. And usually by the end of it, the person feels very loved and very taken care of. And they have the breakthrough that they're looking for. But, I had this conversation with Oprah one day. Women are so abused by our society. When I say abused, I don't want to just be derogatory, but, women are put in this image of who they're supposed to look like, be like, act like. Mm. And women to me are unbelievable. You're about to be a mom. There's another part of you that'll come alive when you're a mom. It's unbelievable what women do. How their kids don't know it and don't understand it is mind-boggling to me. But to be a mom and a business person and to be a lover and to be a husband or wife and all those things at one time, it takes just unbelievable energy, strength, and so forth. And when I see what happens with women generalizing about themselves, like I'm just a homemaker or something, makes me crazy. Mm. But the one thing women have, if a woman isn't super attractive, is they have support. Men don't have that. Men don't go share their feelings. We don't go talk about our relationships, right? Mm-hmm. I remember we were having a program in Mexico and this woman was saying, you were with your friend and he got divorced and you don't know if he's dating. He says, we played golf. And she goes, and it didn't come up? He goes, how would it come up? And she was just like stunned because she thinks how a woman would think versus how a man's brain would think, right? Mm. And so I say this because I was telling Oprah, I said, one of the beautiful things about the sisterhood, if a woman's really attractive, sometimes there's backbiting and there's the opposite. There's not the support. There's just tremendous support. Women share their problems. Mm-hmm. Men don't share their problems. Men's job is to solve a problem. And then you get with a woman in your life and you want to solve it for them. In the man's world, the more you solve problems, the more you move up the hierarchy of being a man. In a woman's world, no, you share your problems so you can connect and feel for the person, right? And you want to stay with it and so forth. So what happens with that is it's actually good for a feeling of support, but it does not create breakthroughs. Because women will support other women in terrible beliefs, terrible states, they have a terrible relationship, and they talk to two other women who have a terrible relationship about what they should do in the relationship, and it's all him. It's no matter how thin you slice it, there's two sides. There's him and there's you, right?
Yep.
And so I was doing an event one time for 5,000 women in Radio Music Hall for Oprah. It was all women. I never heard that high a pitch of sounds in my entire life in one room. And she said, okay, well, I want you to do an intervention like this. I said, well, Oprah, interventions can take 15 minutes. They can take an hour. I go and tell, it can take 2 hours. She goes, well, we don't have that. I said, I know, and you're doing this program live. She goes, well, I think you could do it in the timeline. And I said, okay, but I said, I also have to be willing to do whatever it takes. She goes, of course, And I already had this conversation with her about you can't support women just in their limitations. If you really care about them, you got to call truth with them.
100%.
You can still be supportive. And so this woman stands up and she talks about how she's lost her business because of 9/11. And she's not been able to build it because of her husband and her kids. And she's 110 pounds overweight. And it's because they all demand something from her every moment. Now, I'm a lover of women. Like, I think women are, no man on this planet got here without a woman. I mean, through a woman who risked their life for you to be here. That's my core belief about women. I hold women like this. But this is bullshit, right? I got plenty of friends that had, in the building 9/11, their business didn't go under. So it's not 9/11 that did it, right? And your husband didn't make you 110 pounds overweight, nor did your children. And so everything she's saying is a lie. And the women around her are like, ooh. I'm surrounded by 5,000 women. I go, F it, I can't do this. I can't not do this. I said, now, what you just told me is total, absolute bullshit. And the whole room, it was like shock. And then there's sounds, and I'm like, I'm not being mean. But if you want transformation, if you want to change your life, you cannot do it by blaming everybody else for what you've done. 9/11 is a horrific thing. I'm sure it massively interrupted your business. But she wasn't even in the building. She wasn't even close to the building. I said, this is not why your business went under. You're making excuses. And I'm saying this because I care. Excuses will only hurt you. And right now, you don't have a relationship with your husband, clearly, by the way you're talking about. You don't even have a relationship with your kids. And that's another reason why you're probably 110 pounds overweight. You're bearing your emotion with food, right? And then all of a sudden, there started to be some sounds. And then Oprah says, and she's behind me about, like 50 yards. It's a giant building, right? She goes, but Tony, to be fair, and I snapped back and I looked at her like this. I'll never forget, because I was in state. When I'm in state, you don't break my state, right? And she goes, oh, I'm doing that thing, aren't I? And I said, yes, you're doing that thing, right? So I had to go to a break, and I just kept working with her. By the time I was done, I brought her back and got in a great place. And a year later, she was on Dr. Oz. She lost 115 pounds. She had a relationship back. She'd restarted a new business, right? So sometimes you got to do what's uncomfortable. And so, yes, I'm willing to do that to have someone's life change, because otherwise you're just making yourself feel good. I can make myself feel good and her feel good and go, gosh, that's so horrible. I understand, and all those things. But F that. If you stood up, my belief is if you stand up in my room, something's caused you to stand up. Some part of you wants transformation, or you wouldn't be in my presence. And it's going to happen.
God, so true. I think that's one of the saddest things about what happened with sort of the PC-ness of society today, is that so many people feel like they can't say the thing that might actually help because it might hurt somebody's feelings.
Where did we get up this thing that you're not supposed to offend anybody? Here's a question for you. Can people be offended by anything if they want to be?
Yes, but I don't think that should change what I do because of it.
No, but I'm just saying, so anyone you can, who said, where do we come up with this new magical rule you're not supposed to offend anybody? If you're not going to offend anybody, you're not going to have any impact. I think it was it Emerson who said, be nothing, do nothing, say nothing, and create nothing. That's how you can be sure you're never attacked, right? I'm not willing to do that. I'm here I've got a purpose. And of course, some people are not going to understand it. But people in my seminars do. That's why they're still there 12 hours later. When they wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie, they won't get up to go to the bathroom because they're watching real life as it's happening. It's more dramatic than anything you could write in a script because it's real. Because even today, reality television is bullshit. It's made up, right? People know it's fake. You feel when something's real. And when something's real, you can relate to it. and it calls to some part of you to be more real. And when we're vulnerable and we're real, we can change anything. But when we try to soften it, like use all the language, pretty good, it's okay, all that kind of stuff. Those softeners keep you from getting to the place where you could actually have a transformation.
It's so true. Yeah, I got in trouble on the internet a few weeks ago because I said, I don't think you should cry in business meetings just because you can't express yourself fully. Like I think if you need to self-regulate, like you could step out, whatever, but I don't think that you should have a belief that it will help you and it is totally fine if you cry in business meetings. That is just not our society.
There's no crying in baseball.
Yeah, there's just not. And it's happened to me a few times. And whatever. If you cry, I'm not going to do you. I don't think it's going to help your career. But
you didn't tell them they couldn't cry, right? You just said that I don't think it'll help you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got a tag for that, of course.
Of course. Yeah. Okay, I want to play like a couple little games. One is, I hear that you like this pattern interrupt exercise. And this gives me anxiety to even ask you these questions. But like, the idea is we give you a series of negative patterns, and then you say how you would break free from them. And what I find fascinating about you is like, you kind of just in the moment already know the thing to say.
I adapt it to the person. Right. It has to be like, I need to know what's going on, but I'll give you some general things if you want. But
okay, well, let me give you some examples.
What would be a pattern up for you versus me versus another person is different based on your model of the world, right?
Interesting.
So it's like, what based on what you believe, and I figure that out very quickly when I'm doing an intervention with someone. And so I'll figure out what it is. If I know, for example, you value significance the most, then I might show you how by doing whatever it's costing you the significance, and I'll have leverage there. If you're driven by love, then I will use love as the metaphor. If you're driven by certainty, then I'll show you how it'll take away your certainty if you keep doing this, right? So I'm looking for leverage. It's not just breaking a pattern. That's like a stupid technique, that won't last. It has to be tied to something there's an inner drive about. So we all have 6 needs, human needs. Certainty, everybody has it. It's a survival need because certainty you can be comfortable, because if you're not comfortable, if you're in pain regularly, regular pain means damage, regular damage equals death. So it's the base need for human beings. But if you're certain all the time, you're bored silly, so you need uncertainty, right? You need variety, you need surprise. We need significance. Our culture way overvalues significance today because of social media.
That's
like people, put on filters and pretend they're different than they are. One of my buddies has his own gym, and he told me this the other day, I couldn't even believe it. He said, on a daily basis, women and sometimes men come in who are, influencers, because he's got a great gym. They lay out all the equipment, they take all these pictures, and they leave. They don't work out a single ounce. When you're 27 to 32, you have to be an idiot to not be fit, right? I mean, it's like decent genetics and you can be fit, right? So, but they're making money off of it. They don't do anything. It's just about looking good, right? And then using their looking good to try to make money. So, I mean, that's going to wear off for them, unfortunately, at some stage in their life, right? So it's like significance is overvalued. The need for connection and love is the deepest need that people have. But most people want certain love. And so they try to control the love and kills it. Or they want significant love. Like it's got to be the most significant thing. And then they start to promote who they are more than they are because they think that's what's necessary and they're not truthful, right? And then we need to grow, we need to contribute. Those are the spiritual needs. If you don't grow, your relationship's not growing. If your business is not growing, it's dying. That's the law of life. Everything grows or dies. But also when you grow, then you have something to give. What makes people have a meaningful life is to feel like there's something beyond yourself. Because meeting your own basic needs, any idiot can do. You can lie to yourself and do that. You can work just 12-hour days and do that. There's a million ways you can meet those basic needs of certainty and uncertainty and significance and connection, at least, not so much love. But when I look at people, I try to see what's driving them, and then I know better which pattern will work. But go ahead and give me your list, and I'll just give you some simplistic responses.
Can you tell right away after meeting somebody what one of the 6 is?
6 needs. I look to see what are their top 2.
And what if you know nothing about them?
I ask questions along the way very quickly.
You ask a lot of questions all the time.
One person counted one time. I had a woman who was suicidal, and a guy in the back who was a trainer was writing down. I asked 167 questions before I made one statement.
Whoa, fascinating. So you ask questions to figure it out. What about, you have a lot of businesses now, and can you tell immediately if somebody is somebody you should partner with or not?
No, I can't tell immediately. I can get seduced because people put on their best behavior. They're going on a date, right? So I look at it this way. If I'm going to evaluate somebody, I have 3 questions. Same as what you would have in your business or on a date. can they do the job? If I'm interviewing them in one of my companies, by the time it gets to me, of course they can do the job, or I wouldn't be interviewing them, right? Or if you were dating, can they do the job? If you've been dating them 6 months, yeah, they can do it. The more important question is, can they do that job well long-term, right? Will they keep doing a great job? Because everyone does a great job in the beginning, right? And what determines that is, are their goals in alignment with the job, right? So I remember years ago, we had a woman that worked for us for 5 years as our personal assistant, and we were traveling the world, and we were pretty 24/7, and you become part of our family, right? And we love her and still do. She's still a close member of our family, but she fell in love with another of our employees and had a child, and so she needed to stay put. So we had to replace her. And so we went to the LA, because we were living in California at the time, Southern California, went to the LA Personal Assistants Association. We went through 5 hires in 5 months, and none of them were even close to good. And they all sounded so good to start with. And then one day I realized, we're fishing in the sewer. Who comes to LA to become a personal assistant? They don't come to become a personal assistant so they can help people, change the world, help a family. They come because I discovered they wanted my clientele. They want to talk to Quincy Jones in those days, or Anthony Hopkins, or Sly Stallone, or whoever it was that I was dealing with at the time. And they would treat them like gold and treat all my other clients and friends like they were dirt, right? Including my wife, so I get rid of them. So I realized, you've got to decide, where are you going to find somebody who's more aligned with the job and their nature and in their goals? Or I have a friend that I bumped into in Fiji one time. I have a resort in Fiji, and my wife and I were flying commercial in those days still. And we, you go through immigration, there's about 5 lines. I said, honey, why don't we go on this line here? It looks like it's fast. She goes, no, this line's faster. I said, look, honey, this one's actually fast. She goes, I think this one's faster. I said, fine, you go on that line, I'll go on this line. And we play these silly games. We're going to race. So we're going back and forth. I'm ahead, then she's ahead, back and forth. We're being silly. And this man hears my voice, because I said that to my wife. And he goes, Tony? And I turn around and look. And it's this guy. I hadn't seen him in about 9 years. Brilliant businessman. And I said, what are you doing here? He goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm here with my wife. I have a resort here. I'm here to take a few weeks off. And he said, you have a resort here? I said, yeah. I said, where are you going? He told me. I said, oh, too bad. We're the #1 resort. I teased him. I said, but what are you here for? He goes, I just got married. I said, again, it was his 3rd marriage. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, where's your bride? She was standing next to Sage, and they were doing the same thing we were doing. So, you're in the line. And I said, so how long have you known her? Because I'm talking to you, 7, 8 years? He goes, yeah, probably just a little bit of last time I saw her, probably 7 years. So you know, 7 years, you're just now getting married. I said, how come? He goes, she wore me down. And I thought, oof. So then quickly I'm trying to change the conversation in my head. I'm like, well, are you going to have kids? He goes, Tony, I've had 2 families before this. I went through all of that. I lost all my money twice. We are not. I said, well, I looked across and this woman's like 29 years old and he's 48. I said, have you had a discussion about this? He goes, yes, that was my deal. If we get married, no kids. So I'm thinking, oh my God, he's in for a rough ride. So we get to the front, we introduce each other's spouses and they go off, and I look at my wife and she looks at me and I go, they're in trouble. She goes, oh, you have no idea. I said, I think I do. What'd you learn? She told him, yeah, he thinks we're not going to have a kids, but we'll have within 2 years. And they did, and he got divorced for a 3rd time. The problem is they didn't have their goals aligned. You don't have to have all your goals aligned, but on major issues like a child or not, it's got to be aligned, or you're not going to sustain that relationship. So whether it's a business, or whether I use business because it's easier to modulate in your head, right? Yep. Or a relationship, it's the critical element there. And then the last part is the right team fit. In a business, you can relate to this, I'm sure, because all those businesses you run. You can have somebody who's a superstar, but they're the wrong team fit.
Oh, yeah.
They rub against everybody else. They piss everybody else off. And maybe they're like your top salesperson or your top marketing person, your top whatever. And you don't want to get rid of them because, man, they bring in a lot of revenue. But unless you do, they'll destroy your business. They've always said, it's not the person you fail to hire, it's the person you fail to fire that destroys your business. And so I'm a big believer in testing. Now, one of the things I do with partnerships today, just as a little clue, I shared this with Patrick Bet-David the other day, and I didn't realize how important he thought it was. And I was like, I guess it really is. He said, because I've been through so many rough ones. I said, I was too. But what I do is a full background check on everyone now. Yeah. And it saves me enormous amount. And I tell them up front, listen, I'm an open book. Please do a full background check, everything on me that you want to check. But I don't go into any partnerships without a full background check. It's not out of disrespect. It's out of respect so that we know. And if there's anything that you want to share with us or anything comes up that you think is inappropriate, you can share it with me. I'll give you the report and so forth. Well, the panic you see in some people's eyes, then the tightening in some people, And then the people are like, no, it's totally fine. And then you get the report and then they never call you back. I mean, I have saved myself so much money, time, and energy by having that one investment in a long-term relationship up front.
So smart. I wish I would have done that earlier on. Although I think some of the biggest partnership mistakes I made were cheap in retrospect. Like they were painful, but you're like, I needed to lose that money. I needed to lose that relationship, or I would have kept having the same pattern.
Yeah, there's always a benefit. But as the years go by, you'll probably be less tolerant of having those things happen.
True. Well, it's heartbreaking, I think,
Yes.
because the partnerships, I remember one in particular. I thought we were buddies. I was
Trust me,
like,
I've been there.
yeah, I'm like, I met your baby. I thought we were best buds. And, there was one instance where they kind of targeted me. I was on the internet and I didn't realize there was this type of human that, I guess there are predators everywhere.
Yeah.
And so then I had to realize, where am I short in my analysis of people?
Yes.
And how did I sell myself on what I wanted instead of what was in front of me?
Most of my most important skills came from some early mistakes with people, one of which I had 2 partners, and I brought them on board and made a deal with them that was ridiculously good for them. But it was based still on some results, and they absolutely stole $758,000, $250 of the $758,000 put me in debt, $758,000. My company was doing $1 million. Wow. So not billions, $1 million, right? So it was like all the money I knew, and I'd been on the road 225 days, and everybody told me I have to go bankrupt. And I wanted to kill this guy. He fled to Mexico, and I realized, well, I'm chasing him in Mexico. My business is going to go under. So I went to Fiji, and I was so angry at him, but I said, no, who I'm most angry with is me, because how did I not see this, right? I don't care how good he presented. Was it about human behavior? I don't fully understand. And I was second day in Fiji in this sweaty little hut. And I went to sleep with that thought, just burning thought. I woke up the next morning and I wrote literally for 6 straight hours filled up 3 journals, all these distinctions I made. And I created my Date with Destiny program because I did it to me. That's my favorite program. It's the only seminar I've been through because I did it for me. Changed everything, rewired me so that, sometimes you have values that pull you apart. Like you want to please everybody and you want to be as successful as you can. You want to be totally honest. You want everybody to be totally happy, right? And I learned how to align my values so that I was pulled instead of having to push or being pulled in different directions. And it was the first time in my life I felt calm. And everybody around me is like, you're so different. It was like a rewiring for myself. So I agree with you. Sometimes your biggest mistakes, if you learn from them, are the most important ones. But I don't want to make the same mistakes. And so I look for systems to help with that as well.
You have a program coming up in January that's Time to Rise Summit. I've never been to this one before.
Yes.
I want to hear about it. And I also want to hear about how you prepare for these shows that you do, because I hear you obsessively prepare even to this day for the shows you put on. Is that true?
That's true. I believe in overloading my brain because I never know what's going to happen. Like, because I don't just do a rote talk, right? I sometimes I'll prepare everything and then I go out into the audience and I feel different things. I see people, I see where they are, and I have to adjust. Also, could you imagine, this will be my 49th year I'm about to begin. So I would be bored out of my brain if I was just doing the exact same. Now, I know there's certain things that work and what to do, but I have to be able to adapt to feel alive and do art. And art is something that's different every time. It's not the same. And it's also what challenges me. So I feed my brain everything I can, and then I trust when I step on the stage, what'll be necessary is there.
How do you feed it? Like, what does that look like?
Well, for example, in my Date with Destiny, I have people fill out about a 20-page interview report. There's 5,000 of them. And I read them for a week. So not everybody does it, by the way. Some people wait till the last minute, or don't turn in at all. It's only your destiny. Don't worry about it, right? But what it gives me is the patterns in the room. I may not remember every name, every story, but I remember what the patterns are. And then when somebody stands up, even if it wasn't that person, I know if I can work with this person and help them transform, I could be affecting 50 or 100 people simultaneously, right? Yeah. That I consciously know about. That's how I load my brain. I also brainstorm out different examples or tools. I'm always coming up with something new in terms of insight or strategy. And then, but the event you're talking about is a really unique event. I started it because of COVID, because I was used to doing stadiums, right? And in 2020, the governor of California's team calls me up. I know him well, not a big fan.
Newsom called you?
Yeah, well, Newsom had his team call me, and then he wrote me directly. He was upset about me telling the world that he canceled the event, which he did, right? He said, "You're not making me look good," he said. I'm like,
You go, that's
I was
you.
like, you're a nice man. I like you personally, but I don't agree with your policies, right? This is ridiculous. So we had an event there for 14,000 people. And 2 weeks before, he sends out the message to me from his team and says, you only put 100 people in the stadium, our new rules. I said, I said to his people, I said, this is absurd. We can't put 100 people in a stadium. What are we going to do with the other, 13,000, 900 people? And so I said, screw them. I'm going to move this thing to Vegas. They'll never shut down Vegas, right? So 2 weeks before, we moved 14,000 people to Vegas, and they shut down Vegas, right? So then I'm like, oh my God, I need to help these people. The time they need us most is during this time because everybody's depressed and upset and not know what's going to happen. So I said, okay, let's move it to Texas. Texas is its own country. I met the governor there. I don't know him personally really well, but I've met him. He says he's not going to shut down. 7 days before they shut down Vegas, we rented a big church, 14,000 people. So then I was like, I'm just relentless. I'm like, okay, well, they allow you to put 10 people in a movie theater. I said, okay, we'll do 1,400 movie theaters, local for people that don't have to travel. We'll have big screens, we'll have big sound, at least 10 people interacting with each other. Then they shut down the movie theaters. So I was like, okay, we're going to build a studio. And my CFO was like, you're going to build a studio? Like, we lost $100 million in 6 months because I didn't want to fire anybody. Because he kept saying we're 10 more days to stop the whatever the language was used in those days. And I was like, so I said, we can't wait. So I bought a building because I couldn't build it fast enough. 50-foot high ceilings. I built 22-foot high LED screens, made them 50 feet around me, and got 0.67 resolution, highest resolution in the world. I could see more in your face than I can even see now because you're this much bigger, right? And then I called Eric Yuan, the founder of Zoom, and said, 1,200 people is not going to work. I need 25,000 people. And he's a fan of mine, so he changed the tech so we could do it. And then I hired all these people. They all said, we can't do this in 9 weeks. And I said, well, then you're not working here. And I just kept going through people. We literally, the night before, were putting it all together. And we got up, we did this event, and we had people from all over the earth that participated. And I had 193 countries there. And we had over 25,000 people. Normally we'd have 15,000. So it was even more people because they could do it from different places in the world they wanted to. So then I was like, okay, I want to reach everybody. Let's do an event for free. Let's do one event for 3 days, not just an hour thing or two. Let's do like 2.5 hours a day for 3 days, enough to give people a real transformation. We'll do it right at the beginning of the year. It's kind of the comeback challenge, I called it back then. It's now called Time to Rise. And the comeback story is the best story of your life. You're down, everything's not working. That's what inspires people. This is the comeback time. And we put it together. We had 1 million people show up, 1,000,001. And now we've done it for 7 straight years. I think this will be the last year I'll do it. My schedule's so full. But we'll do one last one. And we're going to do it for 3 days. And people from 193 countries attend, every country in the world. And we go for, like I say, 2.5 hours. And we help you not just make a New Year's resolution, which nobody keeps, right? Because they don't have a plan, they don't have a strategy or anything else. We help you create the breakthroughs that are necessary. And you become part of a really cool community because we have a Facebook community. And so in the middle of the night, I give people an assignment and they make these videos and you see people transforming from all over the earth, every age group, every direction, every country, every language. So I love that aspect of it. And there's no charge for it. Literally, it's free. So if people go to Time to Rise Summit, timetoRiseSummit.com, timetoRiseSummit.com, they can register for it and they can attend it. And you can think about like going to a great 2.5 hour movie 3 days in a row, but instead of just being entertained, at the end of it, your life is really transformed. And then, we've done so much value for people, then some people decide they want to do other things with us, which is wonderful, but there's no requirement in any way, shape, or form. And it's been my way to give back. It was desperately needed during COVID. And then we just, kept the momentum for it for now.
Do I get claps at the event? The Tony Robbins claps? You do, don't you? Because it's my favorite part of the event. Well, I can't wait to come to this next one. I can't wait to see what this next evolution looks for.
That's the thing about it. You don't have to come to it. It's digital. So you can do it
from my couch.
You can do it from your couch. You can do it from your office. And we start here at 10 in the morning. It's midnight in Sydney, Australia, for example. And they go each day all the way through it as well until 3 or 4 in the morning. So you'll be joined by people all over the earth and you'll have a cool community of people that all have something in common. They want more. They're not willing to settle.
Yeah.
If you want more for your life, if you want it's time to rise and take more out of your life, you don't want to have next year be the same as last year, then you need some tools, you need some inspiration, you need some community. and you need some days where it's actually going to happen. Like you said, put it on the calendar and make it lock. So it's coming up January 29th through the 31st. January 29th through 31st. And if they go to timetoRiseSummit.com, get you signed up and lock it in your calendar. And I encourage people, bring your family, bring your friends or your coworkers at the office and do it. It'll be an experience you won't forget.